Good evening and welcome to the March 11th work session of Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please read our mission.
Richmond Community Schools guides students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you, Kelly. And now our vision statement.
Yes. Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you, Susie.
Okay, next we have our showcase video, and that's going to be our REA Teacher of the Month video. And there's Kelly back there, and Kelly will come up later with the teacher once we've viewed the video.
I nominated Kendra Beisner for the March Teacher of the Month, which is totally appropriate with April the 16th being Kindergarten Rocks. So I nominated Kendra because of her amazing dedication to RCS, but especially to her students.
Mrs. Beisner is a very child-centered expert on kindergarten teaching. She is a highly effective educator.
I knew when I was in second grade that I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher because I had so many wonderful Sunday school teachers and a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Cox, that taught at Riley Elementary where I went to school. She was a big influence. This is my 39th year. Kindergarten is the best age level to teach ever, and I enjoy it very much.
She knows developmentally what their needs are, and regardless of the fact that we continue to move into the future and our children are changing and their needs are changing, she knows developmentally what their needs are educationally.
We have several things that we do. Kindergarten team does a weekly standard, and we do testing on that each week, and the students know there's a graph in the classroom that says we did a really great job or we really need to work on that. They also have their own data posted on the wall of their cupboard that tells what letters they know, what numbers they know, and how many words they're reading that are our designated sight words. And the students all know that that's just theirs, and they know where it is. In the classroom, we do lots of different things, from stations 3 times a week to regular, what you would expect, class independent work, reading groups. We also do a lot with science on a rotating basis with social studies, doing the Indiana Science Kits. We've enjoyed those a lot this year. I just think that teaching is the most wonderful profession there is, and I hope that teaching doesn't change too much in the future because children need encouragement, they need acceptance, and they need time developmentally to become who they really are.
Kendra has many years of experience, and I can tell you, as someone who lives near the school where she teaches, the hours that she puts in are way above and beyond what most would anticipate. So Kendra is an excellent teacher with her students, and she was an easy choice for the REA March Teacher of the Month.
She's a reluctant. Her face.
When I went to Charles, it was, for kindergarten, it was nap time and snack time and story time and recess. And then we got to go home after a half day. And as you saw by the video you just saw, obviously we all know kindergarten is so much more now, and it's so critical. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to the board Kendra Beisner, who I'm sure everyone knows, but She is well deserving of REA Teacher of the Month, so congratulations, Kendra, and thank you.
Thank you for the nomination.
Well, I think we should also say that, and congratulate Kendra for being the Chamber Teacher of the Year this year. So,
Been quite a year.
Well deserved.
absolutely.
Can I just ask a question that's a little, what does the Indiana Science Kit look like for a kindergartner? That just kind of,
Well, we have two different kits that come. In the fall, the first one arrives, and it's called Fabrics. And that was a surprise to all of us, but we had a blast trying to dye, launder, stain, pull apart, put back together, all these different fabrics. It was really a fun kit. And the second one we just got, and it is on the sun, moon, stars, and then we do weathers and seasons.
all hands-on, and
All hands on, everything is,
that's nice.
which is really wonderful.
You were teaching when my children were in kindergarten out at Garrison, and everybody always wanted to have Mrs. Beisner for kindergarten, so you've been cherished for a very long time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I think it's
Very
time
nice.
for a big applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Kendra. You are loved.
Okay, next we have our math science presentation.
We do. I'd like to introduce Sam Thomas, who is our math science coach for the district. He's going to highlight some presentations that our teachers made at the annual Hasty Conference, and you'll have to explain exactly. I know it's the annual Science Teachers Conference, which is a big event and was at the Convention Center. And I had the opportunity to attend that and watch our teachers present. Also add that Sam very early on became active in the Indiana Science Initiative and was really sort of the founder. And his principal sitting next to me, so she did the pilot for us and her teachers. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce what happened.
Thank you so much. President Morgeson, school board members, distinguished administrators, I'm so happy to present to you all the STEM facilitators. So all these folks that have come tonight, come up here and stand with us. I included in the board packet a little bit of background information. This is a position, a STEM facilitator position, is funded by our Math Science Partnership Grant. We're in our second year of a 3-year grant. And this is a new position starting this year. These folks are the leaders in STEM education in their buildings. And pretty significant stuff that they're working on doing. One of them is presenting at the Hasty Conference this year. All these folks did that. And we're going to hear from 3 of them about a specific problem in just a moment. But in addition, they're taking time out of their busy schedules with release time to work with their colleagues in their buildings, doing a lot of amazing things. So in your board packet, you can refer to some of that kind of thing and see what these folks are up to. We have Amy Vance, and you're at Fairview. And Kristen Ross is at Elizabeth Starr Academy. Leslie West is at Vale. Lisa McGelsey is at Westview. Adam Scott is at Test. Richard Shore is at Hibbard. Matt Hazacoster is at Crestdale. And Sarah Hazacoster is at Dennis. And who are we missing? There are a couple people who told me they couldn't show up. Amber Hall was not able to make it. Okay, so I've got one other slide. I'm gonna, no, did I have one? No, I don't. I'm just gonna jump right into letting these 3 teachers turn over to them, and they'll explain to you this problem that we presented at the Hasty Conference.
As I said, I'm Sarah Hazacoster. I teach 5th grade at Dennis. And so just a little background in case you don't know, we have a math science partnership grant, and through that last summer we were able to do a summer camp. And it was for kids K to 6, although we actually only have Science Initiative for K to 5. And those would be the hands-on kids that Mrs. Beisner was talking about. And so we had about 105 kids come to the camp last summer, and they were grouped by grade level. Last year we did them like my 5th graders or my incoming 5th graders, and we decided this summer I think we're going to change that, and they will actually be my 5th graders I had this year I will have in summer camp. So it's a little bit of change. We kind of tweaked some things, so we're hoping this year will be even better this summer. For 5th grade, we actually, and we've never really said this, we had a great partnership with a professor from Purdue. Her name's Tamara Moore, and she worked with us this summer. And she brought to us this MEA idea, the Model Eliciting Activities, which are all hands-on, realistic problems and how we can use those problems to guide kids to learn math ideas, but through a science concept. So one of them that we did was a LEAF MEA, where we had citizen scientists who collected data, and the kids actually became those citizen scientists, and they had to come up with a way to look at those pictures and measure them and figure out whether trees were growing or not, and whether droughts had an effect on the tree growth. And then they had to present that information to a scientist. And it's all based on, like, the scientist was a real scientist, a real person that they had contacted. There was another one on pelican colonies where the kids were given visual data. They were aerial photos, and they had to decide whether the nesting needed to be protected or not, and whether it was effective, like where those pelicans were nesting. So they had to figure out an effective way to estimate how many nests were in that area, and whether it was being affected by pollution or whether noise from local traffic was affecting the nesting sites. And then they had to, again, write a letter and present that to a scientist. Which leads us to kind of a more fun one. We had the Bigfoot MEA. And for the Bigfoot MEA, we have, shall I let Mr. Scott share
Okay.
that part?
We introduced this lesson by first having the students read an article about a tracker named Tom Brown from Toms River, New Jersey. And the article talks about how he learned to start tracking and the skills that he gained. They then look at different types of footprints, sea otter footprints, pelican footprints. And so the kids get an opportunity to kind of look at those. There are a few questions that we asked to kind of get them, looking a little more in depth at the footprints themselves. And then we present the problem. And the problem was that a drinking fountain was rebuilt in a city park in the middle of the night. And the city council would like to know who did it. Nobody comes forward and volunteers that information, but what they do find is they find a set of footprints in the park. And these footprints look like this. And we have several sets of these footprints laid out throughout the classroom. And what we want the students to find out is based upon these footprints, can they help us find, or can they find out how big this person is? Because if we know how big the person is, that will help narrow down our search to find out who to go and thank for rebuilding the drinking fountain. So the video that we're going to show shows the steps that the students go through and trying to figure out how big this person is.
Can I just end it and play?
While they're getting the video ready, one of the things we found that was pretty interesting for all of us is how we introduced the problem differently. You'll see in the video, I think, some of Adam's students working through some information about the footprints we were given. I think he mentioned the sea otter and so on. I introduced it somewhat cold in that they were laying around the room, and I introduced the problem first, and the kids had to try to figure out basically what to do. One of the things we all agreed in our math classes is often we show students how to do a particular type of problem. We give them practice. The next day we show them a little bit different. We give them more practice. And there's very little sort of student invention. And what we found for all of us was this really gave the kids a chance not be told what to do, to figure it out. And their methodologies were remarkably different, sometimes not necessarily correct, but very insightful. We also saw with adults that we, at the Hasty Conference, their methods were highly diverse, also sometimes not always successful, and very exciting. What it also gave us was an insight into the thinking behind it. It was one of the times in math and in science class that I could look and I knew what the kids really were thinking more than whether they were just right or wrong. So it was very exciting.
And that's definitely the goal of an MEA, of this model listening activity, is that we're giving them that opportunity to figure out something as opposed to just presenting the information and they take that in. This was definitely like invent something. And I will say Mr. Mellis did a fabulous job at Hasty trying to figure out how tall people were. Down measuring stuff.
My son has a shoe about that size. 6'8", so I knew he's tall.
So this is a video, this is a combination of both Adam and Richard's students.
Sideward ridges over the tracks. Of the stride and the size of the track. Being able to read the tracks and knowing the story is something after observation.
Why don't you use the Florida water rat to show us how you measure the distance between tracks? All right, 26 centimeters, very good. So what you're doing is you measured it from the toe up to the heel.
I think we should measure the size of our foot and then the height of a person. And then figure out how to we found out who has the biggest feet, which would be Ray. And we are 10.5 inches long. So now we're seeing this, which is 14 inches. And we're just seeing how tall she is. So then we have a pretty good estimation. So we're out right now, we're trying to figure out each one so we can find the average height of us and then compare to our feet sizes. Okay, so we're measuring how tall we are, we're measuring how long our feet are, and then we're subtracting those, and then we're adding them to see how many inches taller you normally are and how long it is.
His nose. too ashamed of being the smallest in the group.
And I think that for every 56 inches that his feet have to each foot. And then Jaden's one. First you measure your foot, and then you measure your height, and then you times your foot size by 6, and you should get, and then times your foot size by 6, and you should get close to 5. And we figured out that Bigfoot was about 87 inches tall.
How did you come up with the multiply by 6 part?
We took all of our finger sizes, and then we multiplied them by 5.5, 6, and 6.5, and 6 got them the closest to our height.
Nice.
Cute.
Very nice.
So you can kind of see the different, definitely some different versions of how to figure this out. And my favorite, if you want to tell the one story, it's my favorite.
They were, you may have heard the one group talk about 6. They literally just kept trying numbers until their foot multiplied out to be their height. And they just kept trying numbers and they finally decided 6 was it. But my favorite was a young man. You may have seen the kids trying to chase their hand on the wall. It seemed absolutely irrelevant. There was one young man who is a high energy young man. And he figured out that, he said, well, my foot's supposed to be from here to here. And that's about 1 foot. And this is about 1 of my feet. And I got about a foot here, and I got about a foot here, and I got about a foot here. And both my hands are about a foot. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so he figured out that, and he was holding his foot up like this, we're a little dancing. He said, my arms are supposed to be how tall I am, and my foot is about 6 of those. And so his classmates, for some reason, were tracing their hands, trying to figure out how long their arms were. But it really did, their group was closer than any other. So they figured out that apparently you are 6 times taller than your foot.
Interesting.
I'll just add one final thing that I've got in mind. It's, hopefully you're seeing that the math-science connection, that integration has been the top priority this year, and that integration is what all of these folks presented at Hasty about. And you can see that these are the kinds of problems that really have staying power. You can revisit these problems and keep talking to kids, because they're going to remember this work throughout the rest of the year. And when we're working on ratio and proportion, they've got real intuitive kind of problem solving to reference as they're working on this thing.
This summer, we'll hopefully be adding engineering components to that, and again, we'll be meeting with our Purdue associates, and they'll be helping us bring engineering into those math and science connections.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Just superb. Okay, we're now ready for the We Are Savers check presentation, and I believe Ms. Morganson will be available to receive the check, and do you read them there?
Absolutely. That's exactly.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Tim Frame, president of West End Bank. It's hard to believe it's our 9th school year of the We Are
It's hard.
Savers program.
No kidding.
We're really very proud of this program. We really feel like it's making a difference for the students, both in financial literacy and access to savings products and saving habits. We just can't really express, how proud we are, as a local community bank. West End Bank's been here since 1894. We're one of only 2 community banks that were chartered in Richmond that remained headquartered in Richmond. So we're really proud of the Richmond heritage, and we're really proud of any way we can support students. Since the program's in its 9th year, we thought it would be worthwhile to put together, a brief slideshow, sort of a recap of the program and some students in action. So, Susan, Robin?
All right. For those of you that weren't originally a part of the program when we launched it, I went ahead and did a slide, just kind of an overview of what we've done in partnership with you over the years. So in 2006, we opened our pilot student-operated branch at Garrison Elementary School. What that involved was a student-operated branch that we selected students from their student body. When we first started, that's back when we still had sixth graders in the elementary schools. So it started with sixth graders, but as things changed over the years, it ended up being fourth graders. But with that, Robin, this may be a good time for you to talk about the hiring process of how we selected those students, because that's a very interesting part of the program that we offered. I put her on the spot, sorry about that.
They actually went through job interviews. They had to fill out an application. The staff, as we do with all applications, reviewed those. All students received an interview because we did want them to go through that process of question and answer, give and take, tell us about yourself, why you would be suited for this position. So we had our staff members come to the school. While they were waiting to do their interview, I would talk to them a little bit about professional dress, preparing for an interview. Feelings of nervousness are common, but that they just needed to relax and be themselves and be truthful in the interview. We would then work with the principals in each of the buildings to make sure that the children that we thought that were appropriate for this also did not have any other issues or just, were under probation or whatever, that they could handle that. And then they were selected. So there were some that weren't, but we would always talk to them about the importance that, they were actually on their first job interview. And, how many students have an opportunity to do that at that age? So we really stressed to them that even if they didn't get it this year, they needed to try again because that's part of life too, that you're not always going to get that first crack at the first job.
Thank you. And these school banks are deposit-only banks, so the students have the opportunity at the elementary level to open a savings account with as little as a penny. We want to encourage spending at any level, and we offer them a nice interest rate of 5% for any funds that they save. So that's a nice little incentive to encourage saving at a young age. In addition to the school banks that we offer, we also have a financial literacy component that we offer at the elementary level, and that consists of 4 visits that we go into the classroom for the 4th grade classes. They range from different topics about different ways that you can save your money, choices of how you can save versus spend, and then the capstone visit is we go over the book called The 3 Cups, where they can save their money, spend their money, or give it back to charity in their community. So that's always a nice compilation of everything that they learn, and we kind of leave that for the last session, which is always a great session to see how far they've come along in our visits. Another nice perk that we offer them, they love to get out of the schools and actually come into the bank and have a tour. They like to walk into the vault, even though they think it's what they see on TV, where they walk into this massive vault with money everywhere. All our vaults are not like that, and they're always like,
Where's all the money?
Where's it at? This isn't what they have on TV. But we do bring them in, all of our student tellers, so they can come in and actually see how we operate the bank in real life. So they can see how the drive-through is used. They go into the vault. They look at the ATM from the back side. What else do they do? The security cameras, they love that as well. So, and then we also invite them to an employee meeting where we introduce them as our own employees, and they can introduce themselves and tell us what they do for their job and introduce them to the rest of our staff. So they love to have that because they're kind of up front and center, and they get to tell us a little bit about what they do in the program. All right, in 2009, we opened our branch at Richmond High School. With this, again, a student-operated bank, we select 2 students every year to run that bank under the supervision of someone from our West End staff. That one is open on Wednesdays and Fridays currently during lunch. So anytime anyone needs to run any type of transaction, they can come down during lunch. That's not only for students, but that's also for your administrative staff. We offer both student account packages and administrative staff packages. We also offer a financial literacy component at the high school level. This year we worked with Mrs. Reynolds, Mrs. Isom, and Mrs. Selm in the business department. We came into the classrooms for about 15 different visits. They ranged from human resources, financial management and planning, marketing. Can you think of some other ones that they were all across the board? E-banking, deposits, checking account products, lending, things that you can do as far as protecting your credit score. So all around different areas of interest that we work with each of those teachers to find out what the needs of their students were. We also offer an on-site ATM. At first, when we opened the branch, it was in the Career Center, and we have moved that to the Tiernan Center at your request. You guys have a lot of traffic in the Tiernan Center, and that helps your visitors as well, so that there is an ATM available. 2003, when you guys did your master plan, and unfortunately, our pilot branch location, Garrison, was closed, we expanded this to all of your elementary schools. So we went from 1 to 6. So it was a huge undergoing, but I mean, it was awesome because we had all this exposure to all these great kids. They all went through the hiring process that Robin had mentioned, and they each have their own student bank now, and it's just not one school, it's all of them. So they all had the same opportunity. 2014, we partnered with Elizabeth Starr and their Micro Society initiative. So we're there every week to run the banking portion of that program. Here's some pictures. Top left corner, that is at Elizabeth Starr, that's their Micro Society, and us helping them run their banking initiative. Down below, just one of our financial sessions at, I believe that may be Crestdale. Up top, that was Mrs. Reynolds' business class. Down below in the center, that's what the actual RHS bank looks like if you haven't seen it from the student's perspective within the cafeteria. So we added vinyl lettering to the outside of the windows, opened it up so that they can kind of draw them in more.
Really good.
And then, of course, that last picture, that's one of our students reading the 3 Cups book. All right. So just a little overview of what our commitment is. At the high school, we have the branch open Mondays and Wednesdays from 10:30 to 1 p.m. Financial literacy components, 3 business teachers, 4 classes each. About 15 visits this year, and we impacted over 240 students. At the elementary school level, we have 6 school banks that operate once a month in the morning before kids start school. We interviewed 50+ students this year and trained 24 student tellers. We selected 4 from each school. Financial literacy, 4 sessions per 4th grade. It's about 18 to 20 classes combined, 4 visits each, 80 visits, and we impacted over 450 of your students. And the Star Microbank Society, or Micro Society, that's every Wednesday from 1:30 to 2:30 that we assist their efforts. And this was when they visited our bank for the bank tour. So the gentleman in the top right, that's in where our safe deposit boxes are, and going into the vault, that little tiny room. So they were like, really? But that's what I was mentioning. So it really is that small. All right. So the impact on your students throughout the years, our 9th year, we always take an average of the accounts for the previous school year. But for 2014, on average, we had 473 accounts, and that would include elementary level, high school level, and your admin account level. And there was over $245,000 saved in this program. Okay. And with that, we've always donated back about 1% of the average balances from the prior year. And we started this in 2011. We launched the RHS branch in 2009, and that's when we started this. So in 2011 was our first contribution back, and those went to your academic clubs. Last year, we contributed to your music divisions with Richmond Music Boosters, and I'll leave the surprise to Tim for this year. But combined, we've given back $20,000, $20,500 back to the school through this program. So we love to have this partnership because it helps your students, but in the end, it also helps your students helping yourself as well. So
I've got one other thing.
Sure.
As far as our student tellers that we have here at Richmond High School, every year we select 2 student tellers to act that are actually paid employees of West End Bank. It's kind of an our unusual internship program. It's been fascinating to work with these young people. Many of them, after they graduate from high school, they'll stay in the community and go to school, they'll go to the Army, they'll continue to be employees of West End Bank. If they do qualify for, if they do go on to secondary or post-secondary education, we provide them with a $300 scholarship. And also, if they're trying to do education and working at the same time, we also keep them on as employees. It's been really rewarding to see these young people in a very professional job at such an early age, and hopefully this is giving them an opportunity to really get a jump start in the workplace.
And in the end, it's just about changing lives. How can we help the community by reinvesting our time and talents back into the youth of the area? So children are the world's most valuable resource, and it's best hope for the future. I thought it was a great quote to end the presentation on. So I hand it back to Tim.
Thank you, Susan and Robin. I think you can see the value we place in this program with the time and the resources that we place in this program each year. And beyond that, our additional support this year, we've actually went beyond the 1% of balances that Susan referred to. And this year, we are donating $5,000 back to RCS. And we would ask that this be for the benefit of communities and schools. We all appreciate the effort, and we know the needs there and the great work that they do.
You're everywhere.
Shooting from all different directions.
Paparazzi. Just a little bit for me there, and then I can get you all. And then Mr. Frank, if you'd like to step a little bit closer to Vivian. 3. 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Wait, one more, please.
Any questions for any of us regarding the program?
We would just like to say thank you very much.
Tim? I talked to John at one time, and I believe this was one of the first ones, at least that anybody knew about in Indiana.
Yes, it was.
But I don't think it's any longer a secret. Are you aware of other school corporations in other parts of the state that have emulated our example?
Yes, this was the first one in Indiana, and since then, we know of several that have been published in a periodical we received called the Hoosier Banker, and many school systems around the Indianapolis metro area have adopted this. Do you know any offhand, Robin? I don't know any specifically, but I do know there's, I would say, at least a half dozen such arrangements around the state. But this was the first one, so we're proud of that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think now we move Barb, Disabilities Awareness Month.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Poindexter. At your seat this evening, you have some information from the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities. Every year, March is designated as the Disability Awareness Month, and this year their theme is Love Where You Live, and it really focuses on if the communities work together, people with disabilities will have a better opportunity to be successful. And so each year our principals order materials and display those in the school. Teachers can download coloring books for the younger students, and then we have bookmarks and stickers that usually go to the media centers so they can distribute those. In September, I shared with you some information from our own special ed program here at RCS. So I thought for this month, it would be maybe a little different to focus on an adult who has a disability, to see how the adults are successful in their life after they leave school. So we have a short video that talks, that kind of focuses on Brett Eastburn. And he's, you may have seen him on TV. He also does several motivational speaker events. He was born with no legs and no arms. There really wasn't any kind of medical reason for that to happen. And he's now grown into an adult. He's married and has a really great positive attitude, which he calls no boundaries. So this is a video I'd like to share with you, focusing on no boundaries concerning disabilities.
It's coming. Had some activity up here before, so we wanted to.
Oh dear.
First 3 matches of the season, I pinned the guy in the first round.
In wrestling, you need speed and strength.
Most of the opponents that I beat was out of almost sheer surprise.
Top wrestlers need outstanding technique. But in a sport
6th in the state of Indiana,
where it boils down to one man
3rd in regionals,
against another,
and 4th in the nation.
What you don't need are your arms and legs.
Being born without them, I'm not missing anything.
Doctors don't know why Brett Eastburn was born without limbs, but that didn't stop him.
I don't have arms and legs, and I don't have handicaps.
Competitiveness isn't found in arms and legs. It comes from the heart. At John Glenn High School in northern Indiana, Brett played basketball with a passion and surprised everyone in wrestling. Inspired teammates call him the Stub.
You did not want to wrestle the Stub. You don't want to because he's going to hurt you.
14 years after leaving the high school wrestling ring, Brett now travels the country as a motivational speaker.
Your shake hands. I'm sorry, dude, I had to do it. I had to do it. Ready? Grab me.
It takes only seconds for a man with no arms and legs to pin a student. It's a way Brett proves to others what's possible in life.
When you say I can't do that, you're right, because you're not even going to try.
Brett tells them if he gave up, he wouldn't have figured out how to play basketball. Instead of throwing in the towel, Brett tells kids to keep trying, keep working.
All right, good catch. Take that with you.
Discover a way of getting things done.
When you're looking at it, you're like, oh, that poor guy kind of would. Into the speech, you're like, that's the coolest dude ever. You know?
Students who may doubt their own abilities find it amazing to watch him create art.
That's a circle.
With time and lots of hard work, that circle becomes a coin or a head. This is Brett's self-portrait.
Wrestling, football, basketball, darts, lots of other good shit. Skateboarding, pool. Most of those I've set in my life, I've achieved. One of the first things I decided to do was get out of the wheelchair.
Brett Eastburn is living proof that it's possible to crush obstacles.
Goodness.
This is a stage where a man without legs stands tall and proud of his body.
I truly believe that God made me this way to help people realize their own potential. That's why I was born this way, and I am very proud of that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
He
He was our speaker, our conference speaker this year for iCase, and so he came and talked to all of our special ed directors, and it was very, very motivational for us even. So I hope someday, I think he's been at Dennis, hasn't he, Kelly, in the past? And so we're looking at maybe bringing him back next year. He was already booked for the rest of this year and part of the fall, so we might be able to bring him back next year at some of the buildings, so thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Really, really motivating, inspirational. Makes us thankful.
Okay, we are ready for our first public commentary. Anyone from the public wishing to speak this evening? No? Okay, then we'll just move right on to consent items.
Are we moving for action here on the consent items?
You wanna read the
The
items
underneath-
that,
Yeah, we have the minutes, we have the human resource report, and the field trips, the Skill USA and the PBA.
okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Kelly Baumgartner, seconded by Susie Hively. Comments or questions?
I'd like to just add that there is an addendum for human resources. It has been posted.
Okay, thank you.
It's the purple sheet
Yes.
that we just received at our table.
Well, and I'll be very excited to hear the results of these field trips. They're always
Absolutely.
fun to hear how they do.
Yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for action items.
The first is the policy section, 7,000s, and this is for the first reading we're bringing to the board. Second, we have the second reading and the adoption for our review of administrative, or non-renewal of administrative contracts, so. That one we need?
Separately.
Well, yes,
Yes.
yes. So that one we would need action.
Okay, so we want to start with policy section 7,000, first reading.
Yes,
So
just-
I need a motion. Motion made by Jeff Sliver, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions?
I have a question on wording. When I was going through the 7,000 section, I saw where board-owned had been changed to corporation-owned, but there's still, we didn't catch all of them, because there's still some that says board-owned cell phones, which
So they all should be changed to
probably should
Corporation owned, I would suspect.
maybe corporation-owned.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I think that would be the case. Those have just been, those are, did you get that, Ally? Please.
Okay, anything
So
else?
we can make that change.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And then we'll need action on the renewal of the administrative contracts on our second reading.
Okay? Motion made by Jeff Slifer, seconded by Kelly Baumgartner. Comments or questions? All those in, Mr. Cross.
I do want to follow up on last board meeting's comment that the provision for notice, or for the 45-day evaluation is not required by law, and it would be my advice that be looked at later down the line, because as it's written now, it's really too broad. It talks about needing evaluation for cause termination, and there could be causes that would not in any way be substantively related to the performance evaluation of a particular administrator, and this arguably be an impediment to that, and the law does not require it.
So, what's the board's pleasure? Should we try to put that in this time?
Well, or we can bring it back with that modification for the next meeting.
Well, I think I'd indicated last meeting, some of this is in reaction to an appellate court case that was decided in December that is still being contested in the courts. So I think I'm content. I mean, and again, I think I also indicated that just because we don't have it in our policy doesn't mean it isn't a desirable practice to go ahead and have that evaluation mechanism in place. The issue is whether or not we want to have it in policy so it could be a hat hanger for someone who could, for whatever reason, not have been evaluated to challenge any action on their contract. It can come out, but if the board is of a mind to leave it, I think if we make a note to review this policy in 12 months or whatever, then that would be appropriate.
We had
So it's really the pleasure of the board.
We had considerable discussion on that, Ron, in trying to determine how we should handle that. We looked at statute, we had conversation back and forth, so maybe this is one that we want to review a little further.
It's really up, as long as you're aware of it, I'm okay with it. I don't want to get involved in the area of policy determination of what should be the case, but I do want you to know the context in which this has arisen. I talked to Karen Arlen, who's an attorney at Ice Miller, and she advises Neola, and that's really the source of most of these policies. And so I think we're all on the same page at ICOSA, the Council of School Attorneys for Indiana. And as long as we know what we're doing, that's fine. So it's just entirely up to the board. If you'd like, I can come back with some suggested recommendations to modify the language. It's up to you. It's not a end of the world deal.
Sure, I think so, and then perhaps we can bring it back then at the next
Well, we
session.
can leave an evaluative component in it, but have the fact that the evaluation has to have some correlation to any for-cause termination. In other
Sure.
words, if it's arguably the statutory scheme of, that we would be talking about would be incompetence or neglect of duty. Those would be issues that could be limited.
Sure.
As opposed to immorality and other legal bases for termination.
Right, yes.
So should we have the motion withdrawn? Or how do we?
Just either withdraw it or table it. They might matter to the next meeting.
Table makes sense.
Just table it perhaps to the next meeting with that?
And I'll get some suggested language well in advance of that, because I don't think I'm going to be at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll just table that.
Spring break.
Okay, and the next one is the food service.
Next, we have the food service bid.
Okay, I need a motion for the food service bid. Motion made by Suzanne Darengowski, seconded by Dixie Robinson. Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We are ready for reports, discussion topics. And superintendent search
Just the update,
update. We did meet with our university search team last week, and we are proceeding with interviews. And that's really about all the news we have. It's just, we're proceeding and waiting to conduct those interviews. So, work session.
Okay, work session is about transportation, so I think we'll get a little introduction here and then move around as we need to and get ready to conduct the work session. I think it was about 4 weeks ago or so, we started looking, maybe it's been longer than that, transportation to and from school. We looked at early pickup, we looked at late pickup, we looked at shuttles in the AM, shuttles during the day, and shuttles in the PM. Field trips, big buses, white buses, and just on a serious note, of course, we started out looking and spent an entire meeting on safety and all of the issues and many of the things that we discussed, we had to pay close attention to. Places where we didn't have sidewalks, we had weather, we had highway crossings, and all of those. So I guess certainly we heard from the board that the primary focus in everything we looked at here would have to be at least a safety basis. And at the end of the board meeting, which I happened to be in sunny California on February the 25th, I think that we had reached consensus about 4 different areas that we could be comfortable with. And do you want to project those? There's a slide that we have there, I believe, with those different areas. And so tonight, I'd like you to just take a look at those and see if we're correct and that we had agreed that this would be a good starting point. And the one thing I would note for you that in the first 3 of those, I believe would increase instructional time as well as provide a reduction in cost for our transportation. So if we get two things with some change, that's certainly a positive for us. So the next step, I think tonight, I'd like to move ahead with I guess I would call it at least a recommendation for consideration, that we look at ESA as a neighborhood school versus a choice, and then of course that would cause us to look at other boundary tweaking that might be necessary as a result of the ESA becoming a neighborhood versus a choice school. This probably is to me one of the most logical next steps that might prevent our cutting programs down the road to pay for transportation. So at this stage, if you're ready, we could just start to look at that as a possible logical next step and see what we can learn.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Poindexter. What we've done is we have put together a couple of different maps to look at, and Mrs. Darengowski is familiar with these on a day-to-day basis. What we have is we've zeroed in on the Elizabeth Starr Academy area. The gold lines that run perpendicular and horizontal are our highways that go through town. 27 runs north and south. You can see it kind of on the far left side, and then right in the middle we have Highway 40, Main Street, and kind of intersecting in there are some purple decals, and that's our Elizabeth Starr Academy natural area. That's their that's the students going there, but also just the kind of the home of where Starr is located. The boundaries, though, for Starr right now is really the four corners of our city. I mean, it's the entire city. So for our transportation department, they use that as their boundaries and so forth to bus students in. I'm going to pan this just a little bit. I'm going to move the map. Pay attention to some of the purples. That's our students who are currently going to Starr. So if we come into the left, kind of that northwest corner, we have some students over here in the Fairview area that are currently using Starr as their school. If we cut due south of the area, we have students around that 27 corridor that have chosen Starr as their school. And if we just pan out a little bit out to the east side of Richmond, we have spots of students out there that as our schools fill up every morning, and then at the transportation service has to go out and transport all these students in. So one of the things that we had talked about to minimize that cost of transporting students is to return Starr back to that neighborhood school where we could fill it up by bringing by expanding their borders a little bit and realizing some savings there. Okay. And I'm going to ask Ron Mays to come up and help. We have a couple different, we have an illustration here of an option of one of our proposals of what we could do with the Starr boundaries if we return it to a neighborhood school. If you look on this map, what we've done is we have taken the Starr district and expanded it north to the river on the north side of Richmond. We've taken it west over toward the river on the west side. And then if you notice in the purple down south below 40 all the way down to L Street, correct? Right. South L Street, which is the recycling center. Right now, currently, those students that are west, I'm going to use this little red pointer here, west of 27 here and come down to this L Street, those students currently go to Crestdale. Okay, so Crestdale is north. So we have students down here on L Street, down by the recycling center, that are bused up north to to that school to that school. We call this the finger, the Crestdale finger, so, but one of the issues here that some of the Crestdale people have stressed is that it's difficult for parents and so forth to even get up to maybe school events if they have a lack of transportation to Crestdale, so maybe a more neighborhood school would benefit them as well. But we wanted to show you what would happen is if we extended that STAR district out and encompassed that whole area there. If you look just to the east of that and to the south is the Vale parameters, but we have not moved those at all. On this example, we didn't have to move the Westview boundaries either. You want to talk about numbers, Ron? Currently, what we have outside of STAR?
We have, in double checking, it's ironic that we have half the students' body in STAR are outside their district and half go to school there within their district, which is 168 students, 169 students that we bus in every day into that district. So then, to make up for those 169 students, then we would extend the boundary like Mr. Tidrow was talking about, and there's about 140 students in there that presently go to Crestdale that we would put into the STAR district. There's still, in that area, there's probably 30 or 40 students right now that go to STAR because of the program that they have there. So we wouldn't be disrupting their school programs.
So if we go back to what our original goal was of cost savings on the transportation department, we feel that this would be a way to minimize that impact of going around the entire city and minimize those transportation times that our students might have on the bus to get into the STAR. And this is where Mrs. Darengowski's expertise comes into play. Once we get some information from you on whether we want to go this route, then she can draw up some what-if scenarios and some routes and so forth. But a lot of this is true numbers. I mean, these are data points that she can use to estimate, maybe the number of routes that we would have there. We would propose that going back to our no transportation zones, this whole area down here, the new area, we would include in our transportation pickup area. We do not want students crossing these major highways. We don't want them crossing any kind of hazards and so forth. So they would be offered busing to STAR. So we would not have any issues with that. So we would have to provide services for those students. But we feel that, one, it would keep them closer to their home, to their neighborhood school, but also reduce that impact of transporting students all over the city for STAR. So
The other thing, if you notice there, the flags are different colors in some of those areas, and that's a different school. So in that new STAR district that we're looking at right now, where we have Crestdale students, there's Westview students there's Fairview students, there's Charles students, and STAR students. So these buses are going all through there, picking up various students for various schools. So we hope when we get done, then all of those students would go to STAR, and we wouldn't have any of that cross busing.
So how will that impact Dennis? Because Crestdale kids go to Dennis. So that means those kids will now go to Test, I would assume. How does that impact Test and Dennis?
Right now, I think Dennis has a few students more than Test, but they're pretty equal at this point. Yeah.
Well,
so we would have to.
Depends on what you're looking at as equal.
But you can still go back. You can still go back and say the river is the boundaries. It doesn't necessarily. We had some split boundaries before that part of Crestdale went to Test and part of them went to Dennis.
if you look at Highland as well,
that would be up to the board on how you wanted to do that.
Split. So
Used to be 27, now it's
20, correct.
So,
when Mrs.
well-
Higley was out there, we couldn't just roll everybody to Test from Highland, for example. they would have to divvy up based on the geographic location. You go to test or you go to dentist, so at
Used to be
Highland.
27 split it.
Correct.
And now I think it would be the river.
No.
Actually,
It
right
would be,
now, Crestdale, Fairview, and Westview go to Dennis. And then Star, Charles, and
They
It would
Dale.
be by feeder
Correct.
school then.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So.
Kelly has a question.
We,
On all these students, do all of these students take the bus? Are these just the students that are bused, or are these all the students, or what
This is-
percentage of our students take the bus, or?
this is kindergarten through 4th grade through the district, so we wanted to show you what it looks like for that elementary
this is
population.
This
It's
is,
all
these are
students.
All
All
students,
students?
Yes.
correct. We-
Okay, and then when you-
Potential bus riders, though.
Yeah, so then when, and also when you look at STAR and you're looking at, are you talking about, this, I might be getting ahead of myself, but a school then without the micro society in it?
yes, without,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Okay, can I ask if, have we talked to the people that are the head of the micro society and all that?
Okay, what we've learned, I think, and our principal isn't here, but we've talked to her as well. When we had the upper grades there, I think that they were much more active in the micro society and using that as part of the curriculum. Also, since that time, there's been a major focus on the academic portion and a curriculum that helps the students to really learn the math and the language arts that's tested in the program. So from what I see when I am there and when I have been there, that micro society right now is more like an extracurricular program, and certainly doesn't rise to the level of labeling that a magnet school.
Okay, so it would just fall under just, I don't wanna say a regular elementary school, but.
It
there
would be a community, it would be a community.
Neighborhood school.
Neighborhood school, and that's the way I think that it would be labeled at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up, so that will be our recommendation, then part of our recommendation will be to eliminate the micro society.
Well, it wouldn't have to eliminate it to the sense of if they want it, all the schools have some flexibility to have something in their schools that would be a bit different. So it doesn't mean that the school couldn't do that, but it would not rise, I don't think, at all to the level that you would want to choose that school if it's something you're doing as an extracurricular or an assignment that few of the students are engaged in.
So
Not at all.
Would we limit transfers? Would we say no transfers?
We would,
then?
right, because again, it would be a neighborhood school, so we would not be transferring in for reasons other than if they're a child that had to be educated in a place that we didn't have, And I don't think that's the case. If some special needs students, they probably wouldn't be asking to go there, because we wouldn't have the program for them there.
So to follow up on that, then would we be instituting, are we resetting our students in their home districts and eliminating transfers to any school?
Well, you almost have to reset to get something started. I don't know how you can leave transfers everywhere unless, and manage it with transportation. There certainly could be situations where some students could be left if the parent wanted to transfer, wanted to transport them. And I could see that that could happen, and that wouldn't be an issue, but I don't think we could.
Well, and I think that's important for us to think as we go through this
Yes,
process, because
extremely.
if we're gonna limit transfers, unless there is I don't wanna use the term qualifying event.
Right, that's correct.
If that's the correct term or not, family move or whatever,
Mhm.
then that plays directly into our targets, our caps,
Yeah,
our.
absolutely.
All of that.
It
So-
does, yes.
Or is this student population then is not reset? This is how it is currently?
This is where, when you look at the colors of the dots, this is today's, what school they go to, regardless, today, right.
So do you have a map that shows them reset?
What we were doing is, until we had
It's 50%.
a definition of star, it would have been a lot of what-ifs, but now that if we have star settled on how we're gonna do that, then we would then look at the other schools that the students in that district would go to their home school. Now, we've looked at that a little bit, and it really affects Fairview to the point where we're able to use now all the classrooms because they had a lot of students going out of their district. And now if you put them all back in their district and they go to Fairview, then we're utilizing the full space of the school. And also, we'd be utilizing an open classroom or two at Westview. So it evens things out more by the students going back into their home school.
Right.
So that's the way we started out 3 years ago.
Right.
But somehow, we got all these transfers and moving around, and that's where.
So how many students are we talking about at Westview? Because that's probably our least filled building.
Yeah, they have an open classroom there right now, and we would be, and just looking at preliminary numbers, we would be using that classroom. Now, we'd be using one more classroom there, and we would be using two more we have 3 open classrooms at Fairview, and we'd be using 2 more classrooms at Fairview, which would only leave us 1 open classroom.
So how many, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
So, okay.
how many students, and I doubt if you have a number for this, but I, in my mind, will need to know how many students this affects that will be changing from one school to another if we switch the boundaries. It's one thing if you tweak it, and, you know, it involves a few students, but are we talking about, what percentage?
At Star, as we counted heads today, if we're accurate, and we think we're pretty close, it would be about 50%.
50% at Star.
At
But you need to
Star.
remember, your 4th grade are all going to matriculate to 5th grade. So
Right.
that whole grade level is,
That comes
Yeah.
out.
Right,
But then if you reset and you have no transfers, you could be affecting another 200, 300, 400.
if you reset across the district, it's around 300 students.
Yeah.
Now, that's right. If you look at Star, though,
The biggest numbers
of the
at
kids
Star,
going
of course.
there, and did you count these up? There are a number of Star kids already in this, what we would call the new boundary.
Right.
I think it was 40-some kids, so that 169 would be 120 for displaced Star kids would be going someplace else, but we would make their homes, those 40 kids, we'd make their home school where they are now anyway at Star. So they've chosen to go there as a magnet student, and they would just continue to go there. So, and Dr. Park is correct. It's about 300 that we have, if you want to call displaced or transferred across the city to different schools and so
But
forth.
it eliminates cross-busing, right? I mean, the buses
Oh,
would be
yes,
in their,
yes, they'd be-
in their district. You wouldn't have Fairview buses and Westview buses and Crestdale
these are-
buses in one district.
So this is the Charles boundary. So you have students in here, naturally, the color that we have for Charles is blue, but you can see we have some reds in there and so forth. Those would be, unless they're life skills, then they have to go maybe to Crestdale, or they're a Hibbard, 3rd, 4th grade. They would be called Charles, their home school, so.
Can I ask too, on, when you're looking at this, and you're looking at, I know there are, I think there were 10, I'm not sure if that's students at Fairview that go to Westview, because of the.
Right. We have Fairview
So
and
would that
Westview as kind of,
Eliminate
would be
that?
reset.
correct.
Yes.
And actually,
Because
there,
that's a problem.
Yes.
if you look at in the Star area, right near Star, up on top,
So we
you see
have-
those other multiple colored folks there? Potentially, those are students who have been bumped out of Star, who live right there
Yeah, couldn't go.
because they're full. And so they're getting bussed over to Crestdale, to Westview, to Fairview.
Okay.
Mostly Westview and Fairview, because Star is full, because we're saving 50% for people who live outside the district. So then, and obviously, we left that opportunity open for them to pull kids in that move in later with the caps or whatever, but at some point, there's too many. And so there's those colorful, and again, you can't say that that's for sure. That could be transfers, it could be other things. But I know for certain, there are students that live over there near Star that are being taken over there. And I also know that there are students all on this side of the river that there's at least 10 of them, if not more, that we're taking
over to Westview and Fairview.
And I think too, if you remember when we did the master planning, we tried to project our enrollments. We looked at how close we were to those
Right.
targets. And in an effort to please families, we allowed those transfers, and we thought those transfers won't impact us because we're requiring parents to transport those students. The unanticipated consequence of that was we filled those seats with transfer students, so when students moved into that district and tried to enroll in the school right across the street, they couldn't enroll there. And so we had to send them to another school, and we had to provide transportation for those students. And so in an effort to make families happy, we created this problem for ourselves where we are transporting students all over town.
So in order for us to do something like this as a board, we would have to rewrite the policies that we have.
We'd have to
It's
look at
not rewriting it.
5120.
Tweak our policy.
You have to rewrite the transfer policy.
Transfers,
Right.
yes.
To the guidelines.
Right, guidelines for it,
Bring
yeah.
guidelines,
Policy is fine.
We played with those
Policies,
already.
the
It's
guidelines.
the guidelines,
Okay.
the administrative guidelines.
All right.
Kelly, to answer your question, we have 15 students that are in the Westview district that go to Fairview. So, and we have 4, and then we have 4 just the opposite, so,
Yeah.
that are Fairview kids that go to Westview. So, and we have a student that is just south of Star, I mean, right across he has to go to Westview because there's no room at the inn, as we say, at Star. And then we have just a new one this past week in the Vale area, a block and a half south, that there's no space at Vale, at the current Target and Caps to go to Vale. Now, I forget where you've taken him to Fairview,
And
so.
that really was another unanticipated consequence of those targets and caps, because we meant well. We meant well when we set those, but what happens is our population moves so often, we have such mobility that I may go to Vale and say, I'm in 3rd grade, I need to register today, and we have no room. And so we send them over to Westview, and 2 days later, there's a seat at Vale. And so we just have this constant moving of kids because of that set number, and our numbers are so flexible from day to day.
So did the administrator ask for, as the administrative guidelines states, ask for that student to be able to remain at Vale? I keep asking that question, and I'm not sure what's happening there.
They do
because-
from time to time, but
Well, did they this time? I mean,
I can't answer that, but I'm not gonna, I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that was
no,
just an
I'm not
example.
trying to throw anybody under the
There
bus,
hasn't-
but
There hasn't been anyone since I arrived.
That example that he just stated, actually, the student currently lived in Fairview, moved to Vale. Vale was siblings. Vale was full at one of the
There's
grades.
2 of them.
So it was determined, from my understanding, that they, rather than to pack the grade level, they would keep them at the school they're already currently at.
And that didn't come here. We didn't deal with that.
Correct.
So, I mean, you know, when we have mechanisms in place and they aren't being utilized, then I don't know how you go about making it so that it's not impacting one thing, like transportation, to deal with another issue. So, you know,
well, there are certainly classrooms over the cap, and there have been calls to say, can we keep this student? But the problem is that you get 1, 2 over the cap, and then you have to start saying no, but then 3 or 4 days later, you're under the cap. It's just the movement of the students is so frequent.
well, and another thing that I think the board has been pretty adamant about is being able to leave students at the school that they're going to, rather than transferring them, or rather than if they move, you know, beginning at a new school. And so I can remember us having that conversation also, because we're very cognizant of transitions and how that affects students. So, Susie?
Now, this memory comes back from a few years ago, so it may be totally changed now. But there was a period of time when if someone was say their family relocated in the middle of the school year, there was a provision made, actually it was guidance, I thought at the time it was state guidance, that a student could, at the principal's discretion, stay at the building. And then that transportation, I think in most cases, would be provided by the parent.
Correct.
In order for them to maintain that.
But we no longer require the parent to provide that transportation.
See,
We
that's what
continue to
happened.
provide.
Well-
You are correct in that. You could even do it between school districts.
Right, because
Yeah.
when I was at Highland,
Yes, you're correct.
Northeastern, we had families who stayed at Highland, even
Right.
though they'd moved into a northeastern neighborhood.
But we as a district had said over and over, because we knew that transiency was hard on kids, we had said over and over, if you move, we would like to, please offer the parents the opportunity, we'll figure out how to transport them. That was before I was in that spot, but I remember that, and I remember backing that up completely and saying, yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. There's, there's evidence that would prove that that's not good for kids, those extra transitions. The transiency is terrible. Let's make sure that we offer that. And we heard many times that parents chose not to take us up on that offer.
But I do recall situations where the family moved out of the school district, the neighborhood school area, but the bus went right by Grandma's house that went to that school. And so the kids would get on that bus. I don't know whether that type of, that
Still happens.
yeah, so, okay, I'm glad it's still happening, I'm glad we're able to be that kind of flexible.
But we also learned recently from Fairview, I'll point that out again, and again, it's only one school, but as we looked at the 10 or so students from Fairview, that we went above and beyond to go pick them up from the Vale and Star neighborhoods and take them to Fairview because there were full. 6 of the 10 are not attending their Fairview regularly.
Not making the bus.
Correct. So we're
Well-
going across
I
the
heard that at
boundaries to get
Westview
them.
also, when I was there
That's
for
right.
luncheon visits, that if
So
the
we're making
children-
extra effort to accommodate and try to eliminate
Right.
the transiency, but it's not solving the the real issue, which is still, the students are not getting to school.
Well, the people that we're not hearing from tonight are our parents, in particular parents that might be impacted by families that would be impacted by this, what did we call it?
Resetting.
Resetting of students. And
A little early to ask that. I
it
mean,
might
just
be,
a
but
proposal.
it's the first time we're discussing it.
Right.
And I wonder if there would be a way for us to collect comments from parents who may feel, some people may think it's a positive thing, because what I understand from this is it will make many families who are further away from their home school, it'll make them closer to their home school. It would make it easier for them to attend conferences, attend school events, be more a part of the community than they may be able to do at this point in time. But there may be some families for whom this would be a burden for some reason, and I think we just need to hear from them and make an opportunity somehow for us to collect that information.
Might I ask what led us to that particular boundary configuration?
One was, we looked at the number of students that are currently going to Star that are outside that natural boundary, and that 40 or so. We also looked at how we could eliminate that finger, if you will, for Crestdale, because once you go west of 27 up in where the word Star is, then you've cut off that piece there from Crestdale. We don't want, so we just naturally came down through there. So now the old Star boundary used to go east of the park. So if you go over here it went all the way to, is that Elks Road? So it picked up those few students there. So those students now are going to Charles, which they would remain there, of course, but, so, and we went up to this because if you go north of Star, there are some of those purples that are going to Star now.
Well, and it's important to point out, that's pushed out as well. The top boundary is in a different place than it was, that it is currently.
Correct.
Okay.
If you look at, just hit Kelly. This is the normal Star boundary right now.
Railroad tracks.
The railroad tracks, yes, on the north side. So we're going right above there a little bit to the river around J Street and so forth, so.
Well, I just have to ask the question, and I know what started this is transportation, but we're touching so many different areas. So I guess I have to answer ask the question now. We talked about tweaking in the beginning. Now, I believe we're clearly above, beyond tweaking, because we're talking about 500 plus students. So I guess I would have to ask the question.
300,
Well,
yeah.
but he's also talking about resetting the transfers, right?
That would be the, that's 300 transfers and reassignments.
That would be
Yeah, so
included.
you're talking 500 students, right?
No.
No.
It's 300
Altogether.
total, correct?
Including the transfer.
Well, it's going to be,
It'll be 170 plus 300.
right, 130, so, right.
Well, regardless,
Yes,
whether
it's
it's
gonna be
200,
couple-
300, 400, 500. You know, to my eyes, tweaking was 50 students, not,
Well, you-
So-
50 students doesn't do enough.
well.
truly, if you leave stars, it would be hard to do enough to really make much of a difference. And so that's kind of why we came and said, we've got to take a look at this if we're really going to make much of a difference.
Well, that's my question. My
Yeah,
question is now,
yeah.
should we go ahead and ask the rest of the questions and do it all at the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, one, we talked about the third and fourth grade at Hibbard was moved over to the Hibbard building just because of space reasons. Yeah. Are we happy with the fifth graders at the intermediates?
Oh,
Do we want to
goodness.
send them back to the
Oh,
I mean,
goodness.
do we really want to do the boundary the right way?
Well, that would be how much you want it to take on.
Well, I'm just asking.
I mean,
the
as a
question
board. No,
because
I'm saying.
I would rather rock the boat big now. than
We looked at
rock it every year.
the impact of moving third and fourth grade back to their homes, neighborhood school from Hibbard, and that would require, what did we say, 4 additional classrooms at Charles?
We would end up with 3 classrooms at
Three,
Charles.
3 additional
Because most of them
needed.
come out of there, and right now, by putting all the students in the home school, it impacts Charles a little bit in numbers, but not in classrooms.
Right.
We would still operate the same classrooms, but what we really need to do, if the board tonight says, okay, Star, we're gonna change it back, then we need to come back to you, let's say the next board meeting, with some scenarios on what it does. Right now, we're just kind of guessing a little bit on the impact of the other schools, because we haven't really gone into it that far to see, because we didn't have a directive. Now that we have a directive, we can do that. But I can tell you that the 3 Linda, you're right, it is 3 classrooms at Hibbard. I thought there was just 2, but there's 68 students at Hibbard, 3, 4, and 3 classrooms. And most of those students come from the Charles area, so that
How many?
35. Well, I don't know, 35 right now that are going into the 4th grade do. I don't know what the number is on the 3rd grade, or the 2nd grade going into 3rd grade.
Right.
No, third grade going into fourth grade.
You know.
Yeah, the
3rd
4th
grade-
graders will
third
go
grade-
someplace
Third grade going
else.
into 4th grade is 35 students.
Okay, those are the ones we need to
And
worry
I don't know
about.
what the 2nd grade is.
We haven't identified those
That's
students
right.
yet.
But that's only a classroom and a half.
Well, there's 68 right now, so there would be 35 plus maybe another 30, whatever you pick up on the 2nd to 3rd. I don't know how that works.
No.
They're already there.
They're already there.
The second graders aren't there.
2nd graders aren't there.
The second graders are already at Charles.
Yeah.
But my thinking is that they're planning on having some of those second graders leave and not matriculate into their third grade classrooms, because they may not have enough spots right now for those students.
Well, I'm kind of, I'm thinking kind of like Jeff in that, obviously, if indeed we feel that it would be best to have those students that are at Hibbard, the younger students, back in their home schools, then we should be looking at that scenario also. We should not leave anything untouched, because I personally don't want to be doing this every year. And so if there is something that we can do to create that, then I think that we definitely need to look there also. And then I just want to say something else, because I think that what has happened is that even though we have not decided that we are choice schools, we have been operating as though we are choice schools. It's just been unannounced. And
Well, the state set us up for that in a way, because you can even choose to go to a school that you don't live in the neighborhood. You can go to Northeastern, or you can come to Richmond
We
from
decided to
Northeastern.
transport. The state didn't set us up for transport.
Agreed.
right, and so then now, indeed, we are going to be affecting a lot of students. But there is a reason that we have to look at this very seriously, and it's because of the almighty dollar. And we know that our transportation fund is, it can't continue transporting the way we are transporting. And so, it's not a matter of just asking our parents what they want, because most of these people have chosen the school that their children are at right now. So out of those 300 students, probably the majority of them have chosen the school that they're at. So,
Unless they were in a cap situation.
Only if they,
well, exactly,
Right.
but I'm saying majority, the majority of the students. So, I mean, obviously, we have to let our parents know why we feel it's important to do what we're doing. I mean,
Well, another thought that I have to talk about these scenarios, I mean, I do believe that we've got to provide some guidelines for our scenarios, so we're not guessing. I agree
Yeah.
with that 100%. But I was also thinking the other day, well, more than once, but talking about the walking distance.
Is that a qualifier?
The walking distance, our board, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but 4/10 of a mile for the elementary is what our board policy
0.7 and 1.5.
Right.
1.5 miles for our elementary.
No, 0.4, 0.7, and 1.5.
Right,
Correct,
but
yes.
our.
High school's
but
1.5.
What I was gonna say is, it's 0.4 for board policy for elementary, but our practice is like.
0.2.
0.2 or 1/8 of a mile, so.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I'm hoping to also see is, I think we should create what I call no transportation zones.
No, right.
And then we should spend some time talking about 1/8 or 1/4. You realize a quarter of a mile walking is only 1,300 feet. 600 feet for an eighth of a mile. So, one time around the track is
Quarter mile.
Quarter of a mile.
So that's gonna be your 1,300 feet. So, I think that plays into how you guys are gonna go and to develop your routes. I think, because I think we need to talk about those types of zones. I think I would be interested in knowing, we may wanna have a different walking distance to a bus stop versus a walking distance to a school.
Jeff, I absolutely think you're right, and I think that, whatever we decide, then we need to be as systematic as we can in adopting it. But I don't think that, and I think that's important to do, I don't think it will give us overall cost, right? I mean, the cost right now, I don't think the cost of those stops is significant to give us many dollars.
Right.
I think it's important in the way we get our kids to school and move them, but as far as cutting the dollars, I doubt that we would be able to save enough to make that a significant criterion to work at the moment. I mean,
It might be helpful.
no, well, no, it might reduce time. I don't think that, and I think it is important to do, but I don't think it would give us enough money to even cause us to stop what we're doing. 'Cause
So our priority right now is
think we got-
looking at our boundaries.
I think we've got to get at the bigger pot first and see, and then that comes at a next step, I guess I would say. That's the way I look at it.
That makes sense. Susie?
It might be helpful to, and for families also, if when we look at the next map, we somehow have I don't know, pick a color, gray or whatever, be for all the walking zones around the schools so that a family could see where they fit. So, and that might make a difference for people as they're thinking about how things would impact them.
Actually, we want to do that. We want to, instead of the circle, because then you're speculating on where you are in that circle, we want to have lines, and we want to maybe have it at the school and have it, bus one that you agree to, and show that, okay, this street, you walk over to here, you don't cross East Street.
Well, even before we agree to it, I would like to see that map so I would understand, with the pins in it, so that I would understand what number of kids are impacted by the walking zones.
One of the things to keep in mind with the stops is that those are dynamic a lot of times. It may not always be in the same spot. I mean,
Students
you might
move,
have a
that's
stop there
true.
that's been there for 20 years, but it could be dynamic based on the students who are riding. And it could change from morning to evening as well.
I wasn't really thinking of, I guess I was thinking of the actual walking zones around the schools.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
is what I was
Okay.
thinking about.
But even walking distance to the bus stop should be within reason.
Well, right, but I'm assuming if you live in the walking zone around the school, that's going to be pretty
We-
solid.
We
We're-
use,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I
We're
was
in the
gonna say-
process of putting that
yeah.
information together.
So if we could go back to our topic that we really need to wrestle with, and that is boundaries. So, so do you have any other scenarios to share with us?
Not at this time, because we were waiting on what we were going to do to start.
Okay,
Right.
so then this is what we need. But how do we know that if we look at another scenario, I mean, I think it's pretty much, Dr. Poindexter's recommendation is going to be to reset all of the ESA kids.
Well,
Right.
I think that has to be a big part of it, but it does have import for the district-wide. It really does, because it affects all the schools. And so, I was saying this is at least a starting point. I think we had to start here and recognize that that Star needs to be a neighborhood school in order for us to have significant impact on transportation budget.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that I think it's where we should stop.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think we had to come to an agreement about that, because if we didn't, all of the other changing would not be significant to give us the dollars we need.
So let's
We can
have,
go beyond that to whatever degree we need.
let's have a conversation then about, what you're thinking about the, resetting, our students back to ESA.
For clarification, though, we're talking about reset for all of our elementary students.
We're talking about reset for all.
All of the buildings.
Because they have to be reset.
Yes.
Because just by resetting
And
STAR,
You do that, absolutely.
That's right, I understand that. I heard the comment, reset our ESA
And that those are the numbers you gave me today?
I think that's
No.
because that's where the
Resetting the
majority of
program.
them
That's
are.
because we had such a large chunk.
Every
Yeah.
transfer from every elementary building.
Right.
And again, keep in mind, you're talking about the half that didn't already live in the ESA district, which was very small because it was very tight around the building because of the fact that it was a choice or a magnet school. And so what they're saying is they pushed the boundary out and kept many of those students because they would have, if it had remained a neighborhood school, they would have still been in Star District. So it, that's the part where I have to keep reminding myself that we're not just pushing everyone back. Some of them would have been there naturally anyway if the boundary hadn't been tightened around the school.
Yeah, we're pulling the Star
Before.
neighborhood in, but we have to move some others out in order to get the Star back in, perhaps.
Susie?
Well, we really, we really aren't worried so much about fourth graders because they will be moving on to their intermediate school next year. So that leaves kindergarten, first, second, and third graders. And it might, I don't know how complicated this map would look if somehow there were a way to tell what grade kids were in, but perhaps it would be good to know the numbers of kids that were impacted in those grade levels, because that makes it a little bit different. I mean,
That's what we're doing, and we're looking at the 2015-16 school year, so those fourth graders would be on. So we're looking at K1, 2, and 3 right now, and then we're looking at the average of new kindergarten students that we've had in the last 5 years or so, and that's what we're using as the number for kindergarten. Until we have the kindergarten rock, we don't know what those numbers are.
Okay, let's go back and let's see if we can focus on the fact about ESA becoming a neighborhood school again. Thoughts on that? Kelly?
I would like to know, when you do that, you're taking out the micro-society, correct?
No, I don't think that I would say that we're taking out the micro-society, Kelly, because I think that to the degree that we have micro-society there now, we could still have that because it is not significant to the degree that it would interfere with other work.
Okay.
It's already been taken out to the degree that.
So the
would have to-
curriculum.
Well, but I think it needs to be looked at and revisited because, you know, when we look at STAR and the needs and so forth, we have to look at the curriculum, and is this something that is affecting their academic achievement?
Should we do that?
And
Well,
that's
I think we-
what the
I think-
administration.
I think one of the, I'll just give you my first thought.
Okay.
When I looked at STAR as a choice school, it's unusual to find a choice school if you are working and need to work and show that you need to work on raising student achievement to a significant level. That's typically not what you find in a choice
Right.
school. And I think that that's what, and I'm not being critical with that statement, I think that's what everyone saw. The principal, the teachers, and all saw that in order to really focus on the achievement of math, language arts, the reading part, that the work that might have been concentrated in the micro-society and that curriculum did not lend itself to really improving those math, language arts skills. So I didn't mean that to be critical. I think they've already seen that, and that's why micro-society became something that was done more when there was some spare time. Also, as I look at it and I've talked to people, when the older students were there, and I think they were more engaged, it would have been your fifth, sixth graders.
they played a leadership
They
role.
played a leadership role.
That was lost when they.
Was significant, and when they left, the micro-society as it was initially designed didn't fit so well with the younger students. So all of those variables came into place, but from the standpoint of some of the things that they've done there to sensitize the community of the environmental needs and taking care of the environment, nothing really would prevent that from happening, and I think that's been very positive.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Dixie?
Well, I think as a school system that we try to be everything to everybody. Just because we love kids, we love families, we want them to be able to do what they feel they need to do. But by the same token, as a school board, when you have to deal with finances, you do have to look at it from the business angle. And we have to save money. We're left with no choice in the transportation fund. And because of that, because we do have to think of the dollar, then we do have to look at the ways where we can save the most. And we have talked about this for several weeks now, and I really do think this is our only alternative.
And remember too, the other part that comes with that, we've talked a little bit about Hibbard, the 3rd and 4th grade students at Hibbard. And I want to keep reminding you that the mechanism that allows us to pick those students up and get them from all over town, even though a majority are Charles, they're not all Charles. The mechanism that allows us to get those students to Hibbard is the STAR routes that go all over town. So those two will have to pretty much almost, we're deciding that we have to do both of those things if we do this. Because, and I apologize if that was a repeat when I left the room.
No,
But but that's very important. Like I said, most of them are from Charles, but they're not all from Charles. And right now, we have the STAR routes picking up also the Hibbard students that live outside of the Charles boundary. And then they're being shuttled from STAR and Charles to Hibbard, the 3rd and 4th grade students.
So
Isn't there
if
another
we
go ahead.
made Hibbard's, if we combined Hibbard's schedule so that they were all on the same schedule.
Then they would ride in on a dentist or a test route.
Yeah.
And then we would shuttle all 3rd through 8th graders to Hibbard from that test or dentist. That's how I would solve that.
So if I can remind you, right here, we have that as a unified
Right.
schedule, which was a recommendation. I think it was one of the options that was
Talked
agreed
about at the
upon.
start.
If that works for your scenario,
But we've-
Suzanne,
but-
that's, right? I mean,
It
'cause
does.
you-
I just was reminding that those two, if you eliminate the STAR routes all over town, that other really
gotta
kind
do
of has
something
to
with-
happen, or you haven't solved.
Well, and not everything that we're doing is basically just to save dollars. We're also doing things that are programmatic needs.
Oh, the time on task is,
Well, three of the recommendations from prior time would improve the amount of instructional time.
Yeah.
And so, from
Keeping the
what,
students in the building instead of transporting them is great. I mean, that's, so.
so I'm understanding that there may be some programmatic issues with having 3rd and 4th graders at Hibbard. And so, we're having that all reviewed, and it's not going to be ready by the time we need to do this, but I think that it's already been identified that there are some programmatic.
but maybe that is a stage. Like, maybe you realize the significant changes to help you with the finances, but as we progress through the, analyzing the curriculum, the gifted and talented or high ability curriculum, then you can maybe then look at that as one of the next phases, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking that
Right.
if we're going to be making changes in boundaries now, then let's at least look at what else
So you're
might
saying,
need to be
if you
done.
were to consider repositioning 3rd and 4th graders, the majority of our back to Charles, then you would then look again at the Charles boundary too, maybe on either end.
If you look at the papers that we gave you with the current enrollments and the projected enrollments for next year, if we would just up those caps just a little bit, it would appear that Charles has capacity in next year's 3rd grade class for all of their current 2nd graders. So
kinda laid this
that's
out.
one piece of that puzzle.
Well, and when I was looking at the maps with Ron, there might be some options for students that are now going to Charles to go someplace else.
Vale, Westview.
If,
Right.
and, I think Westview is a place that we really need to be, looking.
This boundary over here was in question when we did the
And this does not show everything on the south side of town if you look down here in this area, so there's a few out there, not a lot, but there's a few that would, we
I mean,
could,
there's not
So-
a lot of students down there, which in the south, in the north, it's why one of the other suggestions I had, although I haven't looked at how repositioning STAR would affect this, or 3rd and 4th graders from Hibbard riding middle school buses, but, we have talked multiple times about in the outlying areas where we have to travel lots of miles to pick up a few students.
Right.
Trying to figure out a way to maybe pick up both high school and intermediate school students at the same time, and then make 2 deliveries.
Right.
Because right now you have in not many cases, in several cases though, in some of those rural areas, there could be 4 buses going out there right now. There could be a special needs bus or a preschool bus, plus a middle school, plus a high school, plus an elementary school, all going out to those far areas for a handful of kids.
Well, and, you know, I mean, we even looked at what the students that are recommended right now that are leaving from Crestdale, that are going to Star, could be that some of those kids would go to Westview, because they're being transported right now regardless.
And we're looking at that, you're absolutely
And
right.
so, and so then that might lead to some students that go to Charles might be able to go to Star, that are closer. So Kelly?
Can you go back to your three options that you had, on option number 4, actually, modify after-school transportation at Hibbard, Test, and Dennis.
That's the after-school.
What does that mean? After school to
Right now, we
home? So when
we
you
have a
modify-
late bus for tutoring,
We have buses for
clubs,
everything.
and discipline behavior issues that we have at all 3 of those schools that we
Some
would look at.
discussion has occurred, certainly with our administrative team, is, do you reward students by keeping them after and picking them up on a bus and taking them home?
That's, in that, that they do that 3 days a week for Hibbard,
Do
Dennis,
we have
and Test.
a cost on that at all? On how much that costs?
Yes, we had,
It's on our spreadsheet.
It is on our
To run,
spreadsheet.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's on your spreadsheet, but in general, kind of our estimated cost to run any type of what we would call a shuttle, that would be what would kind of constitute a shuttle. Because it is a smaller route with not as many kids, is about 45,000 is what we're estimating
A year?
a year,
Mm.
yeah. Give or take, depending on the routes,
For one?
for one.
Okay, and how many do we do? Do we just do
Do
one?
they all go to, does one go to every building, or is there 3 buses?
no, we have multiple buses every day, one at each building.
Talking
Suzanne,
about
we're
the
talking about the
shuttles?
shuttles from the after-school. You might
There's-
have one, you might have 1 to 5 buses. I mean, some schools, Test might have 2 buses that you're transporting students home
For after school.
for
So
the
that-
after-school.
I mean, that's,
bus.
The late
that's
bus.
The late
that's
bus.
a lot of money.
Both
right
Test and
there.
Dennis do it 4 nights a week, and Hibbard does it 2 nights a week.
2 nights, right.
And some days, if there's 35 students at Test,
No,
there's 2 buses.
So that's,
20 to 50.
I mean, you're
Well,
talking hundreds of thousands of
And
dollars.
the 45,000 is if they ran every day.
Yeah.
So if they're only running 3, then it would be 2/3 of that. But,
Correct, yes.
But 45 is to run every day, a shuttle.
Well,
A
to
shuttle,
me,
just
that's
one.
one, I don't want to say easy fix, but one
It's already been
one
approved.
fix that would take a chunk.
But there's also another side of that. We're thinking discipline, but they're also talking about after-school.
There are tons of after-school activity kids
So-
too.
After-school
And the
Discipline
clubs.
is-
All-
Right.
if-
Discipline
if
is
it's
a
all
real
discipline,
small number,
I would
actually.
agree
But-
that's an easy fix.
I don't think it, I'm not looking at it just being discipline. I'm just saying that the facts are we have to cut costs. And to me, that's something that you do, the clubs and all that, provide transportation if you're able to do so, but we have to make cuts somewhere, and to
Right.
me, that would be an obvious place to start cutting
Right.
without affecting programming, without affecting where the child goes to school.
Mhm.
But the thing is we need a much bigger chunk.
Yeah, but
And-
I know,
But
but
you're
I
right,
don't,
yeah.
you're not gonna find it at one pot anywhere.
No.
So
You're
that's a big chunk right there. That's
Yeah.
one
But the
piece.
Star is a big chunk.
Correct, I
That-
know,
That's
but
a huge chunk.
I had questions on the other options, recommendations too, and I assume this is gonna be part of the recommendation. It won't just be a star recommendation.
No, in fact, I think what we started, and I didn't make that really clear, as I kind of started with the assumption that we would do these.
That we thought we'd already
Star
approved
was my
those.
next piece, as I was just talking about it. I didn't make that really clear.
So
That
is
these
there a
would be-
total of your recommendations dollar-wise?
We did
of
we had
these?
this on a chart at one time for each of these.
Okay, well, we have that information then. I just have to go back and add it up.
And Kelly, these were the ones that at the last meeting, we as a board decided that we could live with all of,
Right.
all of these as a recommendation.
It says they had some dollars attached to them, but there also programmatically were some gains.
Kathy may have those
You wanna
scores
look?
in her head.
No,
Look
I'm
at this.
fine. I can go
Do
back
you?
and look it
The
up. I just
dollars?
wanted to
It's,
have.
it's over 100,000.
I would say it's well over 100,000 minimum.
Had those added
Um,
up one time.
What we have to remember is that all of this is relative to the number of days that they run. So in our estimates, we of course want to estimate as if they ran every day. So I know that what we had kind of talked about is probably definitely over 100, probably 150 might be the mark. Some of it has to do with efficiencies too, that these are already structured for highest efficiencies. So some of this might not cost that total dollar because they're running as a part of some other pieces. So when we look at that, it may not even out to be exactly those totals, but that's
Well,
where
and you
we're-
also then would have to have, again, I'm not sure it comes out of transportation, but then there's a cost on the other side of the aisle to get teachers out to students, because remember, if we're not gonna transport kids, we're gonna send teachers out. So there's some balancing that is gonna have to happen there too.
that is minimal.
That's minimal.
Oh,
And
I
we're-
know, but I'm just saying, there are some trade-off costs. so.
And we're looking at that with Mr. Millis and Dr. Poindexter as far as the scheduling goes, and getting the middle schools and the high schools together, in fact, tomorrow, and to talk about some of those conversations about how we can optimize those
Well,
resources.
because I know there's,
so.
the numbers is what concerns me a little bit, because I'm fairly certain that at least on one leg of the orchestra shuttle, one trip, there's one student on that bus. Well, obviously, one student does not an orchestra make, so, how do you adjust that to make sure that student gets an opportunity to participate in that program, but not be running a bus for a trip back and forth from Hibbert to Dennis for one child? So.
So how does the board feel about resetting our students?
There is a concern that I have regarding a couple of things. And it's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but it's the truth, because I probably am in my head. We're about to start registering students for kindergarten. Parents are getting ready to sign their students up based on where they live or where they believe the boundaries to be. So if we're going to do this, we may be running ourselves out of time. I'm not quite sure what to do about that.
Well, we've tried to be proactive this week in getting information out, because it is a concern. I know that principals work on a timeline, and they have forms that they're ready to send out, but we certainly have been proactive, and we've gotten messages out to principals asking them to be considerate of what we're trying to do here with transportation, and not to ask parents or pass out any transfer forms until we get further along. We've asked them to keep a record of anyone coming in that's asking for transfer forms, either in or out, but to hold that and indicate to the parents that we're still working on our transportation needs, and not to complete those, because I think if I were a parent and I came in and completed one of those, I'd probably, in a few days, think that I'd had my child taken care of. And so I think that we want to be sure that we don't mislead anyone while we're still trying to decide where we have space. So we have sent that out, so principals are really, they're aware of that.
And then, of course, I've mentioned it before, because and again, I'm bouncing back and forth, because Dixie's right, we can't be everything to everyone, but part of our success, I guess, we have really great schools in lots of neighborhoods, and people have chosen to go to some of our schools versus not staying in Richmond. And so I want to make sure we're not sacrificing too many students either. So, but again, I have no problem saying that, you should attend any one of our schools is the right school to attend. But I just want to keep that in mind, that there's a history of folks choosing Richmond schools, but specific neighborhoods, so.
Well, if you tell us to reset, once we get all those students back where they belong, it may be that not too much tweaking of boundaries is required other than
That's
what's
true.
around Elizabeth Starr Academy. It may be that boundaries
true.
are
That's what
pretty
we
sacred,
assumed,
so-
yeah, so.
I think we can work rapidly because we've worked a lot of scenarios within an hour here on occasion. So if we kind of get some direction, we will work rapidly to get information back.
And I know there's several families who will be relieved to know that they'll be able to go to the school that's in their neighborhood. I know those families exist. I talk to them a lot, so.
All right, Dixie, how do you feel? We're just gonna go around and.
Okay, my prime concern is that we keep all of our kids.
Exactly.
That's my biggest worry.
So how do you feel about resetting?
I don't think we have any choice.
Jeff?
I think for us to make our decisions, put together a plan, we have to at least look at the numbers with all of our students reset. I think we have to look at, if we've determined that micro-society is, I'm going to use the term add-on, so that's my
Right.
word. I don't know if that's a correct word.
It's a support.
If we feel like micro-society is no longer a program that is embedded in the curriculum and beneficial to the students, and we want to eliminate that as a choice school, I can support that. I think if we do the resetting, I think there should be some things that come along with that there are no transfers. I mean, we go through at least a year or two with no transfers. Now, I'm not saying that they can't have a qualifying event, a family move, or, one parent passed away and the child has to move, whatever that, I'm not gonna say that those don't exist, but other than that, no transfers. And honestly, that's at all levels, that's A through H of our choices.
If we look back at our historic policy, when we did have neighborhood schools, one of the things that we did allow for was, for example, the family who maybe had childcare in a school area outside of the school area that they lived in. Grandma lived in a different school area, or the babysitter, or whatever. And so I think it might behoove us to look back at some of our old thinking when we did have real neighborhood schools and see whether there are some guidance there that might be of value to us.
There's some other parts too. I mean, we have students who go to some place different 3 and 4 times a week. Based on work schedules of parents. I can think of one little girl, every week she has a different drop-off schedule. Daycare one day, club one day, home one day.
Well, if it weren't on the route, certainly that'd be difficult to accommodate.
In this
Yeah.
particular case, it's all on the same route, so it's not as big of a deal, but it does. But there are other cases where, joint custody cases. So I think we would have to spend some time on some of those things too,
Sure,
because you're
absolutely.
accomplishing by saying, transfers are limited to, there are what we call the T10, which is the situation that allows us to take a student to somewhere other than home, from home and from
Right.
home. Club, Boys and Girls Club is one of those things, but also childcare. What is considered a childcare center? Do we make extra stops out of district for childcare centers? Right now, we do that. We have students from Crestdale who are transported to a childcare center on the west side. So there's some other things that we really need to talk about, because if you're going to do those things and say, we're not going across boundaries, then we would need to address after-school activity stuff.
Well, I feel strongly that whatever determination we make as a board, that then that is the guidance that student transit uses.
Absolutely.
Because it seems as though some of these things have just happened, and I don't know where they came from, you know?
They were transferred over when they've been ongoing.
They've been growing
think,
for a
yeah.
number of years. They've
Okay,
been growing.
Kelly?
Can I finish mine?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. That was my fault. I interrupted you.
So sorry, Jeff. Well, you know, you're surrounded by a bunch of women. What can you expect?
Say
We understand, don't we, Ron?
No, don't even go.
I'm not.
Okay,
Plead the fifth.
Jeff, you have the floor.
Thank you. I also think we need to look at resetting the third and fourth grade at Newburgh back. I think those numbers need to be in it as well. I also think that as some of the options that you have listed on your PowerPoint or on your screen tonight, I'm assuming that we're going to go forward with the recommendations of taking, instead of transporting wings, we want to send staff into that.
That's exactly correct, and that really isn't significant for us. We can figure that one out easily.
And we're going to do this, and the same thing with the band and the. Okay.
Correct. But I would just make one comment that Jeff was started with, and we didn't reinforce it. If we were to permit transfers, start to do that, I would say we would be back where we are fairly quickly. And that's what's happened now when we've permitted transfers prior to any opportunity for the students in our neighborhood to move in and move out. And it's compounded our problem. So it's really tough.
Well, there's things that we can do. I think one of the things that we've done with our transfer policy now is I think, if I remember correctly, we've made the statement that once you've made the transfer and you've been there, that becomes that student's home school. So
No,
that
that's
gives-
for reassigned students.
But, okay, for reassigned.
But
when we were-
So-
But even that causes issues.
Yes, we would like for them to return to their school residence.
So I think if we just go on the premise that the reset takes place every year.
But have we been operating like that? That,
We do
No,
not reset.
no, the policy right now and the guidelines say that once you get transferred, if we move you, that becomes your home school.
right,
Because of that.
Now, if you transfer, that is a yearly decision. If it's a voluntary transfer, it's a yearly decision.
but do most people usually get that transfer once they start at a school? Is it sort of an
I can think of some
expectation?
instances where they didn't. Those are the ones you hear about.
Yeah, okay.
But the significance of the displaced student or the reassigned student, that is a significant one, because if you don't do the reset, if for whatever reason, even if we do all this and someone gets bumped out of a school and we have to make an adjustment, if you don't do the reset out at the next year, then you keep compounding that issue that you're gonna have, that stays there, and then there's the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So the idea that, and at first I wanted to follow the guideline, which was that becomes your home school and you stay there and you stay there as long as you want to. But because of our transiency rate not really changing, I mean, it's changing, it's changed because we have fewer schools. I don't think there's as many moves, but it's because there's fewer places to move. But there's still a pretty significant transiency rate.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that reset, if you, even with this, if we have to reassign a student, and it's right across the border, and they're able to go, they live right there by Vail, and they're able to get on the Star bus, we have to, I think, change our policy to say that it's a reset, or if you choose to stay there, transportation's on you. There's not a, otherwise we're gonna get ourselves back where we are.
Well, and I think we have to be careful about transfers, period,
Agreed.
and how we determine, oh, well, you can stay if you provide transportation. I have a problem with that because of our demographics.
Right.
And so we're going to be we're going to be adding to this inequity, I guess. And,
true,
and I don't think we should add to the inequities that are already
Well, and
out there.
here's another one that comes up that I think we're gonna have to be careful of, and I think one of the drivers will tell you this too, is, we have often said, if you say move, I know we're not talking about the intermediate schools, but say you move from Dennis to the test district, but you wanna stay in Dennis. And they've been told many times, if you can get to a Dennis stop, you can go to Dennis. Well, what happens is they're walking across the tracks and going in unsafe places, because that stop was designed for Dennis and with Dennis boundaries in mind. And then students are crossing railroad tracks and things to get to a Dennis stop because they want to stay at Dennis even though they've moved in test. And then pretty quick someone notices that, and so we add a stop over the line so that they're safe. Well, then that stop continues to be continued on, and I think Jeff back there has one case where we added a stop because of the railroad track thing. I think there were 5 or 6 students, we added the stop. All of them moved away but one. Now he's going all the way across the boundaries to pick up one student because that stop was
But
created.
if we have a strong set of guidelines.
Correct.
Then you won't have to worry
Correct.
about creating
Correct.
or whatever, I don't think.
So are you talking about changing the practice of if a student moves during the school year, keeping them in their current school?
That's my question.
Well, I think that's, once we get this, then we have to work on what our policy says and how we're going to adjust that. I mean,
'Cause if
we're
you
going to have to
don't-
work on those guidelines pretty carefully, I think.
Yes.
So, Dixie?
Well, and to tie in with that, our foster kids
Oh,
and
that's
our
a-
homeless kids,
Yes.
You can't fix
they
that.
don't need any more changes.
Well, and
We can't fix
we're
that. That's
required
required.
to take care of that anyway, so that doesn't change.
Right.
Okay, Kelly,
Board policy can't trump that.
Well,
reset, how,
I keep going back and forth because earlier I was ready to take a hard line. But then, you know, we with our demographics,
I still think we have to do that. We have to be consistent, and we have to set some rules and caps and on transfers, and we can't stray from that. For a while, I mean, we have to get a hold of it,
I think so.
and I think that we've also proven that by doing and being everything to everyone, as far as transportation's concerned, we have not only done ourselves any favor, but I don't think it's really benefited the children from what you hear from coming out of the schools. So,
I'd love nothing more to have an
Thanks.
east and a west magnet school. I mean, I'd love that. We've talked about that numerous times. I'd love for that to happen. We're just not there right now.
Susie?
The idea of resetting as of the start of the school year, for example, according to addresses and such, makes a lot of good sense to me, that you start the year that way. I do think that we need to support our kids throughout the year, not necessarily with transportation, if they were to move out of their school area, but I do think there needs to be some latitude within the policy to allow a child to stay in a school if their family moved out of that area, so that until the beginning of the next school year when you would reset based on addresses. I also, that number 4 up there, the after-school transportation, I recognize that that is, I'd like to see us pare that down, make it a little bit more manageable and efficient, but I also recognize all of the research that says kids are vested in their schools when they get to do the kinds of, the choir and the orchestra and the kinds of things, and work on a school play and the kinds of things that might easily happen after school. And I would hate for us to, especially because of our demographic and because we have a lot of kids who, or even athletics, might not be eligible to participate in extracurriculars without that. Does it have to be provided every day? Probably not, but,
You know, there is a way, and Kathy and I have talked about this because we have the same concern. And the buildings get some dollars through title, and that, if that can be a priority for them, they can make some choices and provide some transportation with some funds that they have. So the general fund, obviously, we're concerned about, but there are some ways to support students that have specific needs that you're mentioning, and there are some dollars in both of those buildings, test and dentist, that they could use. And if they're managing it, then obviously they could watch that closely and use that as they really need to help kids that want to be there and need to be there for some extra tutoring or some event. So it's not that there would not be any funds. I just
They
hadn't
just have
gotten
to
into-
prioritize.
They'd have to
Exactly.
prioritize with the dollars that they have
And-
available.
and, I mean, this is really old school, but when my kids were in school, which
Yeah.
I'm celebrating a 40th birthday on Saturday of one of my children, the oldest one, not the youngest. Gosh, she probably won't appreciate me advertising that, but anyhow, I've done it. My point being, when my kids were doing things after school, and we were attending neighborhood schools where there'd be people living around us who, and maybe the kids wanted to run cross-country, or maybe the kids were in a school play, we would
Share pickup.
carpool and share pickup. And so maybe there would be a way through even communities and schools for communities and schools people to help to support families in coming up with a carpooling plan. So there might be some other ways of skinning the cat that we just haven't thought about doing.
Okay, so this is what I've heard. I've heard that everyone, we still have lots of questions, but we are basically in favor of resetting our students. And I have to agree with Jeff that I think we also have to look at our third and fourth grade at Hibbard. Now, I didn't hear everybody talk about that, but
I think that's a given.
if anyone is not feeling comfortable with that, please say so, because that will mean that we will be asking our MAP specialists to kind of re-look at how boundaries might be set to accomplish that.
Well, keep in mind, that third and fourth graders moved there strictly for space reasons,
Well,
not
eh,
for curriculum.
Except that you're just talking about the Charles students, and they're not all Charles students. The
Right.
majority of them are, but they're not all.
Right. So is that agreeable with everyone, that we look at that also?
We should investigate the impact of having third and fourth grade wings, I'm sorry.
Not wings.
I get
It's
confused.
the
about
full-time, the
Well,
full-time,
Well,
highly, or.
No, they're just students. Until they're there, they have.
Self-contained
become highly
classrooms.
Well,
Right.
maybe what we need to do is look at how we provide high-ability services for our third and fourth graders in our elementary buildings, and there might be some,
Well, we have someone that's going to be going to the buildings.
Yeah, but we're
Well-
already doing that.
well, we might want to look at how we're doing that, because the other thing that is makes me a little uncomfortable is to have so many of our high-ability students from one area.
Right.
And so that doesn't seem very equitable to me.
I agree with that, too.
And there probably is some identification that could easily be done in
All of our buildings.
in all of our buildings.
And I think as the study is being done, that they will look at all of that, and we will probably have a recommendation sometime in May.
Absolutely, I think that you're absolutely correct, and these discussions have been occurring around, certainly among our group, as we've noticed, just what you've brought out very well, because it does have to be considered.
Okay, is there anything else you need from us as far as proceeding?
If I'm understanding, we're going to go back and look at the reset of the boundaries, and then with what Jeff had asked us to do, I think we can do it and bring it back, and you can look at it. We just go back and look at the space needs, and we look at what we can do what possibilities and what we'd have to move, and just to get those students back in a home school. Is there actual space? Where would we have to take them or whatever? But we've certainly looked at it enough that that's not a big problem to do that, if you'd like us to do that in the meantime. And that would certainly address some concerns that Susie's just expressed.
Okay.
And to clarify, we're going to also go with the recommendation of going with Star as a neighborhood school, correct?
We move
So
as we've
it's all-
talked about
Yeah, good.
tonight, and then also look at the possibility of getting our third graders
Right.
back
I appreciate that way we go.
building. So that gives us an opportunity to pull it all together in one big picture.
Mhm.
And who knows, your map may look different the next time you come.
It better.
It changes.
Anyone else, administrators? Anybody else wanna?
Is there any one of the other things I touched on, and I'll say it again, I think there are at least 2 or 3 routes out in the rural areas that we could eliminate.
Right.
It would require, I think the board, or at least administrative piece of that would be required in order for that to actually work, is some adjustment to the release schedule at this intermediate schools. So I just want to keep that seed in there, because I do think that's some significant
Bring that.
savings, but
Are you suggesting that the intermediate and the high school run the same schedule, or the intermediate and the elementary?
intermediate and high school have the same schedule. It's just that in order to it actually works okay in the morning, because there's a little window of opportunity to make 2 drops. It's the afternoon for 2 pickups at 2 buildings that release at the exact same time. That's the issue. And I only bring it up because I do think there's some significant dollars there if you were not sending as many buses out in the rural areas as we are currently. So if you were just making, 1 pickup instead of 2 in Boston for students that are on the same schedule right now. The intermediate and high school are on the same schedule.
Yes.
And you have 2 buses going out to Boston to get a handful of students. If you could pick them all up at once, I think it can be worked from student transit. When student transit decides routes, that can be worked. The part that's going to be hard to work around is 2 pickups at the end of the day, unless there's some adjustment to the release schedule. And maybe it's not a formal thing. Maybe it's the rural students hang out at the middle school for about 10 extra minutes, and the high school buses then come around and pick them up later. Maybe it's not a formal issue. Maybe it's just so I just want to throw that out. But
Something that we could do with,
right, it's something
That
though
would make
that
sense.
student transit couldn't decide to do that on their own.
Actually,
You all would have to
My
decide that.
understanding, and who knows about that, because sometimes that's not right, but I do believe that because of the current busing situation with elementary on a different, impacting the intermediate, sometimes the intermediate kids have to wait for the elementary buses to come in, so they're used to holding kids a little bit till the bus comes through.
Absolutely,
So-
because of the time crunch.
So perhaps that wouldn't be such a big deal.
It just is a decision, though, that the school would have to live with if we decided to try to do that. There would be an adjustment that would need to be made at some
You
point.
just have to maybe
Someone
see
would
how
have to
many
be
kids would
around
be
to tend to
impacted.
those
Exactly,
students if they were going to stay after for 10 minutes or
Maybe it's a
15
matter of
minutes.
seeing the numbers of kids that are impacted. Probably it's not.
It's not a lot of numbers, but it would result in, at least 2 less buses that I can think of, let alone maybe 3. So.
Thank you, Rob and Ron, the Rob and Ron Show.
Rob turned the lights up, he should have turned them down earlier.
He thought we were getting sleepy here. So do you have from us what you need
I
to
think I do.
proceed?
I think we're all gonna,
Okay.
I think we're all gonna meet tomorrow and get busy.
Okay.
But we're prepared for it, we really are.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Public commentary? We have our famous bus drivers here. You, either one of you want to speak? Okay, come forward.
Please tell us we did a great job.
Yeah, great job. My name's Jeff Nicholson. I understand, I mean, what you're trying to do and everything, and it's complicated, and I commend y'all for trying to do this. But, I mean, you're gonna run into the same problems. I mean, you're talking about changing and looking at the transportation policy. Well, you don't follow the one you got now, so I don't know how you change it.
We're going to,
Yeah, I
though.
know.
That's going to be the difference.
And then setting the boundaries, I mean, okay, you say, okay, if they move from Dennis into Test, but they still want to go to Dennis, then it's up to the parent to get it to Dennis. Is that to the school or just to a bus stop?
Well, I think we haven't made those decisions yet.
Right.
As to how that's going to work.
Things that you're probably gonna run into, or the children, or the kids are going back to walking across the railroad tracks again.
This is what we need to have discussion on after we get our boundaries looked at.
Right. And the after-school bus. All right, if you still have them in place for tutoring, but then you got a couple of students that are kept over for disciplinary actions, they're gonna say, well, just go ahead and put them on the bus, because they don't have no other transportation home. So, I mean, you're gonna fall right back into the situation you're in now with that, after-school buses.
But we will have to have some guidance on how they'll be used.
Right, because, I mean, some of these students, they won't have no other transportation home. There's no parent or no grandparent that can come and get them. And I know you ain't gonna have, you can't transport, the staff can't transport them home in their personal cars and stuff, so.
We're going to have the schools work with us on this. I mean, it can't just be us trying to do it all. We have to have a partnership there, so.
Yeah, and another one about trying to find out who makes these decisions, why we're at right now. I mean, you know, who says, okay, it's all right, they moved in Test, we'll let them keep on going to Dennis. I mean, you know, then decisions like that need to be.
And those
To a
are
certain-
the very things that we are going to have a discussion on and hopefully have some guidelines, some.
Your comments are comments that we need to know, and those things
Right.
happen. And what we have to do is be sure that we understand those things have been happening, but with changes, we'll have to be sure they don't happen in the future.
True.
Otherwise,
Guidelines are
as you
stuck
said,
to.
we'd be back where we started if we did.
Yes.
So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, and you talk about the buses going out to the rural areas, all right? I mean, well, because like Suzanne said, I mean, you got elementary, intermediate, high school, but on the northeast, like in around Middleborough and out in there, we got 3 dentist buses going out there, picking up dentist kids to take the dentist. I go out in that area, I only pick up 5 kids. But then there's another bus that goes out in that same area and picks up dentist kids.
And that's on,
Another bus.
and that's on student transit to fix that, for sure.
Well, the reason why I only pick up 5, because if I pick up more, I
You're
wouldn't
full.
have the room to pick up
You're
the rest of
full.
the kids on the route.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why we send more than one bus out in the rural area, because
That's how it
of the
happens.
capacity of the buses,
Absolutely.
so.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Appreciate you being here and appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, board reports, old business, and I would like to bring up about our success committee last year when we changed the way we did things at the board level. And we changed the time of the board meetings. We changed having executive sessions most of the time after the board meeting. So we made, in our joy of learning, and we made several changes. One of the changes that we had talked about and agreed upon were our work sessions. And we wanted to make those as much work sessions as possible. And that's one area where we haven't done a very good job at, because it seems as though other things get thrown in. And so, anyway, as we were planning this last time, Jeff said, you know, this is supposed to be a work session, and it looks like just a one of our regular meetings because we have so much that we're covering.
Yep.
And so in talking with Dr. Poindexter, she feels that we need to try also to stick to that work session. And so I just wanted to remind us all as to what we had decided last year and see if you all felt that that would be a move in the right direction for us to really focus our work sessions on work sessions. And our business meetings then would take care of the other, whatever other business that we have. I do think that maybe we should try to keep the celebrations because we haven't even gone a full year for our rotations of our themes and so forth yet. And so, but we still need to be careful with that also. But if we could at least keep our celebrations so that we can finish our rotation, I think that would be good. So, anybody have any comments?
I don't
Kelly?
quite understand. So you're saying that, like, we had a work session tonight, correct?
Right, but we had action items and consent items.
I
and,
understand what you're saying.
You
Okay.
know.
Yeah, all right.
And I'll just share one of the thoughts that I'd shared with Linda and Jeff. You know, we have a lot of things that we're working on, and there would be times at work sessions if we didn't have action items that perhaps some people from the office would not have to be here.
Oh, yes.
With all the things that we have to do, if someone doesn't have to spend, you know, the evening here, then they can be doing other things.
I think we
And so it increases.
discussed that last year, hadn't we?
Well-
Wasn't that the way it was supposed to go?
Yes, that was the way it was supposed to be, but somehow things have just gotten stuck in, you know? It was like, oh, we really need to do this, and so, so anyway, if we could at least attempt to do it the way we had intended.
I think the superintendent and board messed up. We did it. We
I
made
think it was
decisions.
just the superintendent, probably. He's gone.
That's right. We've been doing it since I've been
When the
here.
guy's
I
not
have to
here.
take responsibility.
So anyway, starting in April, we will try to have a true work session.
Oh.
So,
It'll give us a.
yeah. So, any other old business or,
No.
Jeff, you wanna, anything you wanna say about the finance committee, because that's coming up? Our
No, I
meeting?
think-
Tuesday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I haven't gotten with Karen yet, but I think part of the things that we should start doing at the finance level with the committee meeting level is now start talking about the contract, side of the
Yeah.
contract.
Mhm.
I posed the question last week, I said, okay, if we go through and we create all these efficiencies and we save $1 million in our transportation, I'm just wishing.
Yeah, let's keep it
So
going. Let's
the
wait.
question, well, I wanna
Then they'll
make
do
sure
it for free? No.
our goal is to save 300,000.
Yeah.
So what happened to the other 700,000? Well, right now, as the way the contract is written, it would all go to Sodrel. So one of the things that I wanna start asking some questions
Yeah.
about how do we draft the contract
Yeah.
and the different areas that need to be looked at. So how do we go to Sodrel and ask them to give us a price? You know, how do we ask them to bid it? What are the requirements within the contract? Because I think everyone here would agree, if we save, we're not gonna save $1 million, but if we save more than what our deficit is, then we should enjoy that balance.
Absolutely, and I
For
think.
us.
That's an
Yeah.
easy one.
Yeah, and I think that is, and we've had a little bit of discussion about that, and I think if I understand it, and Karen can speak to it certainly more carefully than I, but when we open that contract, we can then say to Sodrel, this is what we want you to do, and that's what we pay for. Am I correct?
That is correct. The language of the contract will be totally different when you look at the payment system, because we're not going to have probably, what we have to do is we have to provide them with a proposal, and then they will counter that proposal. And that's normal with amending and renegotiating a contract. And when we look at that, the language of the tax levy, in our thought processes, I've talked to Rob and Ron Cross and Betty, is to take that piece out, at which point that goes away. That thought process of them just keeping everything goes away. What we originally started the original contract with had a baseline specification for routes for the start time, end time, transportation piece. And then it had appendixes for each individual subsection, is what I would call it, of the contract. And I do think some of that will need to stay the same as far as that type of environment in the contract. But that piece where it looks like they're enjoying the spoils, I guess would be kind of the term that you can kind of look at, goes away with the removal of the language of the tax levy. And we have already had discussions with them that they're aware that that is going away. And that is something that when we propose that original first pass to them, they already know it's just a payment for services. And that will include, like any contract that we have, a management fee. And that will be where their piece is in what it costs for them and any profit that they would gain. I do expect that there will be some billable options in that contract, because we may have needs that we don't know about when we write the contract, and we'll want to be able to address those as they come. But that is our thought process. As we move into the contract language and we move into the contract itself, that's where we're going to build it from. And they are very aware of that, and they've been wonderful in working with us and creating these baseline costs so that we even know where to be to start that conversation. So that's where we'll go.
So go
Well,
ahead.
no, it's just- But the thought is,
Okay.
the board needs to provide the guidance what we want in the contract.
Exactly.
And I think with that piece, there's some other things in the contract that I'd like to at least discuss. You know, some of the metrics on how we measure their effectiveness, are they getting the kids to school on time? You know, those types of things. There's just, now is the time to take a look at that.
Right.
It's a work session.
So,
Well, and I think that's
Right,
something
that's
where
a
Ron
work
guides
session.
us and lets us know how we
That's a work
move through that,
session.
right?
Right.
Sorry?
I think that's a session where Ron helps us think about how we.
hopefully
how we
Ron
meet.
will be able to be at our meeting. So,
You won't be,
on Tuesday.
he will not be there.
Oh,
We
well,
would- we
darn.
had checked to
I
see if
would
it-
suggest maybe this be a work session topic, because I think there's more to it than financial measures. As you look
Well,
at
we're
that,
going to
it's
start
not-
out with it being at the Finance Committee, and then hopefully build, because, you know what, we just have a lot on our plate right now. And so we built the Finance Committee for us to hopefully use that in a way that would help us to be more efficient. And so anybody that has this urge to, I'm not saying that it can't be maybe at some point, but to begin with, I think we need to start at the Finance Committee. So anybody that has an urge to come to look at and work on the contract, it's Tuesday at 1:30?
Okay, now what could we do in preparation? Is there something that we need to do in preparation?
Well, it sounds like Karen's already done a lot of stuff in preparation.
Well, I will need Ron here.
So-
I mean, he really is gonna be the legal person. I can look at the contract and say, you know, we'd like to have this changed, but I'm gonna have to make sure he can be here. And if he can't, we might have to consider changing the date and time.
Well, I think,
I don't feel comfortable making contractual decisions without him here to help guide us.
No, we're just beginning the discussion of our
Okay.
guidelines and expectations.
So
That's what we're doing.
What do you want then that would be the financial piece to this that I would need to prepare for it to be at Finance Committee?
I'll get with you.
it may be some of the data that we've looked at already.
Well,
We
we've
need
got
to
a-
pull back
well,
as far as.
We've got a 40-page contract, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
But again, that's not just dollars. There's a lot.
Right, there's a lot of appendixes and there's a lot of,
Okay.
I mean, we've all read the contract, so we all know what's involved in it.
Okay.
So,
I think it would be, these, when I get frustrated or conflicted, I guess is the right word, when, because I think some of these conversations are so informative that having them at a time when everybody can't be there, they seem to me to be more what we need to do in a work session, so that everyone can have the benefit of the information and the thinking behind proposals or suggestions or concerns, because that seems to me to be, if the board is going to work together, the topics for a work session. Because otherwise, we have people who have to get caught up, and they don't know what was said before, and that is not efficient.
well, I guess I can only speak for part of the reason why that we started the finance committee, because we wanted to be able to have a deeper understanding and more of a background involved, so that way when.
We being the board.
We being the board.
Mhm.
So that way when we come up, some of the different options, at least we've had an opportunity to go through it. And
But
we'll be
we
able to
don't
provide-
have an opportunity to go through it if we're not all together. That's the point I'm making. That if we're all together, I mean, if we,
Well, see, the funny thing, the finance committee used to not be a board committee. When the finance committee was last, I guess, created or used, it was a superintendent's committee. Well, then what happened is, we sit in the superintendent's office, and, there were actually 3 board members were on it at the time, and the financial manager, and it wasn't open to the public. It was a small, closed-door meeting, and that's where the financial spreadsheets were created. That's where, that's where a lot of what we use today was created. But what we wanted to do was, we wanted to make it open, because for the other board members that wanted to be involved, they couldn't attend that meeting because we had the open door law. We couldn't have 4 people in the room. So how do we create an environment that gives us an opportunity to do the research, get involved in a little deeper detail, and give the ability for any board member that wants to be involved, attend? Well, the only way we could do that was to make it a board committee. That way it's published. Anybody that wants to be involved with it can do it.
It's
So-
a work session around finance almost.
Right.
Well,
So what
and
we're trying to
that's
do-
the other way of doing it, is just to have a work session.
When we set it up, when we set up the finance committee, the idea behind it was to build expertise, because we all have interests, and we all have things that we maybe want to learn more about. And so I remember specifically, I remember you, Suzanne, saying that, because we talked about even having rotating members and so forth, and we talked about, but we wanted to build capacity within the board for the expertise. And I think it's really interesting that we really haven't, at least from my viewpoint, we haven't given the finance committee a chance. We gave the success committee a chance. It was also a board committee. Not everybody could attend. We were very diligent about keeping people informed with minutes and with coming to board members, board meetings, and talking about the things that were, that we were thinking about doing and so forth. It seemed to work fine. But yet, the finance committee, for whatever reason, we haven't given it a chance to prove itself. And like I said, I mean, think about how much time we have taken already with transportation. And we've even done some of the work in the finance committee.
with the transportation piece and brought it to the board. So, you know, I just feel like that we should at least give it a chance. And if it doesn't work and people aren't happy with the way it's working, then we'll scrap it or we'll figure out another way to do it.
Or we'll pick another Wednesday or another night of the week to have a board meeting.
You know, it just seems as though there's so much involved here that I can't begin to even with going to the meetings, it's hard to wrap my brain around it, but I wanted to learn more. And so, so that's just my food for thought, is that I would just ask that we try, and if you're just feeling as though you're totally out of the loop, then we can change it.
I think we have the success committee, it was known that it was a committee for a short period of time with a goal, and then that was gonna be the end of the committee, which is a lot easier, you know, with all that we have going on, knowing that we're just going to do it for a few meetings. The only thing I can say on the finance committee is maybe we need to talk at some point about how we report out, so that all of us who can't attend all the finance meetings, you know, get the same information, at least number-wise and so forth, that you all do. I'm not saying we don't, I'm just saying that we
Do you
need
have an idea for that?
No,
Of-
I don't have an idea for
Oh,
that.
okay.
The only thing I
You
have.
just wanna make sure that that
The only thing I
happens.
could even think of was taping it, and, you know, you can watch it.
Well,
when you
that's a
can
great
watch it.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could, if you wanted to spend the time to
Right.
look at the tape.
Right, well, especially when we're talking about transportation, and then there, you know, there, you can, and the way we have board docs set up, you get to go back and pick what you wanna watch, so I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but I thought that might be an idea.
Well, we've got to figure out some way for us to have a deeper understanding and be more involved in the contracts that are being presented to us and financial problems, I guess. Often, over my last 8.5 years being on the board, I'm a, you know, personally, I'm the kind of person that, you know, I like to get into the understanding of it a little bit. I like to understand it. And when you have someone standing up there in a session like tonight, right about now, I'm sure these people are about ready to close their eyes, they're ready to go home. And often, I mean, honestly, I mean, that was part of the reason why we talked about this, because we wanted to pull some of that
Correct.
away.
Yes.
And so, when you take a board meeting like we had tonight, we were in the board meeting for an hour before we even got to public commentary.
Yep.
I mean, look at our minutes tonight. We didn't even get to public commentary until we were here for an hour. So, part of what we were trying to do is we're trying to pull part of that out. We're trying to make it not such a secret anymore. Not that they're trying to hide things, it's just that they are confident in what they present. They understand them. I don't think we do. Because sometimes we make decisions rather quickly that I don't know that I would like to have more detail on. I mean, I can remember the night that we sat here at a board meeting and said, you know what, I want to give every teacher in this building an iPad. Oh, that made every one of us feel good. Do you realize how much money we spent that night? There was never a number discussed. You know, I didn't add it up, but if you just figure $500 an iPad times 500 teachers, yeah, I don't know. 300 teachers, whatever. But whatever, the question is, we made that decision that night.
That all happened after we left.
Yeah. That's
It's
my
true.
point. My point, that is my point. So now that budgets are so tight, now that money is so tight, then I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to be more involved in the finances. We need to be more involved in the budget. We need to be more involved, period. Now, I'm willing to do that, however the board wants to do that. I'm not trying to railroad anything. I'm not trying to be the kingpin. We pay Karen to be the financial manager. I expect for her, as we should all expect for her, to lead our district. But in order for us to do our job and support her and support the school system, we have to be informed. So I'm open for suggestions.
So can we agree to give this a fair chance? And then, I mean, you know, we can say in 3 months, in 6 months, we can review it. We can think about what's went well with it, what hasn't gone well. That's what Dr. Poindexter's trying to get us to do throughout the system, I think, is to, you know, review what we're doing and is it working? You know, if it's not working, then obviously we don't want to keep doing it.
Well, one suggestion that Kelly made would be a start in that, and address to at least a little, small degree of what we've heard from Susie, is if they were taped, then every board member knows it could not be there, would be getting that information at the same time, so that we weren't coming back and using board meeting time again to recap. Because again, if we do that, that's a duplication of time.
I think probably
And that's
your
where we've
finance
been, and I think
meetings-
that's why people are a little
And I think
frustrated.
your finance meetings would probably go better if you didn't have 7 board members. I mean, I didn't think the whole idea was that all 7 of us were supposed to come to every finance meeting. I thought
I didn't think it was either.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a smaller group discussing, and then we can review it if we feel the need, or you could tell us what we, actually, you could tell us what we need to
I
take a
think
look
one of
at.
the things that could be helpful, though, is if the board were informed and knew the topics and the things that we're going to be addressing. Because I think that's important, that the board really think about the topics that need to be addressed, so that that's not just the responsibility of one person to always come up with the topic to be addressed.
Well, I think the other issue is that it's been overwhelmed with this transportation issue.
In
I
fact,
think that's-
absolutely, it was
You know,
overwhelmed.
I think ultimately, the goal should be that most of the stuff, other than the budget, and I think the board should always be involved in the budget, but there may be pieces of it the finance committee deals with, but I'm hoping that, to me, a functional finance committee is stuff that is, a lot of that will come from the board being referred. Let's send it to the finance. I think what we need to start to do is we need to start to look forward to something, you know?
Yes.
And by us looking forward, and I think it'll help Karen, because then, you know, it'll help her know what's coming down the pipe. Unfortunately, when we started the finance committee, then our meetings just didn't really do anything for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, because we kept waiting on information on sod rollers. Really, was nothing that we discussed at the finance committees at all. I mean, we had the contract to read, but, you know, it was 3 months after we had our first finance committee before we even sent a letter to the attorney asking Sodrel to open up the contract.
Can we talk about a calendar at some point of contracts or whatever?
Yeah, I know when we initially, I guess, the original, I don't at all feel like the finance committee was wasted time, because the original intent was to take a look at possible contracts, to take a look at what's coming in the future. And we did that. We saw the True Champion information come, and that was a good opportunity for us to take a look at a vendor that was trying to save us money. And it gave us some time to really look thoroughly at that and get that review out to the board before you actually took a vote one way or the other whether to go with it. And then after that, I guess, and perhaps this is a misunderstanding on my part, the finance committee, I thought, was created not necessarily as a routine committee, but a committee in which the board would designate what we went through, and then moved on that at appropriate times, whatever that may be, whether it be 2 months in a row, whether it be 2 weeks in a row, but it not necessarily be considered routine, but in whatever may be happening at the time and the topic of need. And then that review would come to the board so that decisions could be made by the board in an informed manner. So that part, I think that we are doing. Transportation is a big task and undertaking, which we all knew would be. And so I think that we moved as swiftly as we could in the circumstance, because I think that there are legalities that we had to work through in order to do that. So we have covered the financial pieces of the transportation contract at the Finance Committee a couple of times, but I guess my understanding of the committee was that it was that was the big chunk of what we would do, and I think that it has done that. I really do. I think that the purpose is there, and I think that the intent is there, and it's an excellent intent. So I need to know, kind of going forward, is where the board stands on the routine nature of it. Is it something that we will always cover this and this and this in every finance committee meeting, or will we do it periodically? Or because I have to manage my time accordingly also, and it's very, very important that I know that going in and not go month to month for me, because I really, most literally, have 2 days now to prep for Tuesday, because I have to have it posted to the web by Friday.
Absolutely.
So it puts me in quite a pickle to know now
If there's
to plan.
if there's preparation, you're saying.
Right, and so that's where going ahead and planning out would be excellent, having a calendar of things that we want to look at, because I'm always scrambling, and I don't like, just personally, I don't like to scramble because it doesn't let me get you everything that I would like to get you, or maybe I don't feel comfortable with everything when I'm going through it as much as I could if I had a little bit more time to really dive in and look at it. So that's just my own thoughts on the committee itself, because I think that it is a positive thing. I think that it is something that is good. That's just a personal thought on
That
it.
seems reasonable.
Well, I think you've seen that in some, part of the discussion that we had finance committee meetings ago. Really, we didn't really start talking about soccer numbers and the last 2 meetings. Contract review, all contract review above a certain point was part of the goal of the finance committee. I think also part of what we decided as the group was financial statements and cash flow statements and those types of things we used to get those monthly, reported monthly, and then they went to quarterly. And they're in the consent agenda, other than the year-end report that Karen did last month. So part of what the finance committee had talked about was let's start having monthly reports and start talking about the documents that she's gonna put in the next week in the consent agenda for the finance cash flow. But, with that, we even agreed to move the finance committee back another week to allow her to have the time to post it, so, recognizing her time constraints. So, I don't wanna create extra work for her, it's not my intent at all.
But the contract calendar could help that, if that
Well,
is one of the intents.
And honestly, I would think that there's gonna be a degree, we would want a degree of flexibility, because we don't know what's gonna be on our plate tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. That's,
We really don't know what's gonna be on our plate tomorrow. So,
Just thinking about what's going to be on my
part
plate
of,
tonight.
part of my goal is to see how it can be developed, because I think if it's developed in the right way, I think it could help every single person sitting in this room. And if it isn't, trust me, I have better things to do at 1:30 in the afternoon than sit here in the meeting. So,
And I appreciate moving it back. I understand that you did that, and I think that's good. But to her point, you know, the calendar a little bit more ahead would be very helpful.
For everybody.
Right. And then, and you said something about going back to monthly reports, so is that an additional workload, or is that something, you keep track of that anyway monthly, it's just you were
I
only
have
reporting
to post
it?
them to the board packet. I have to have them done about 5 days earlier maybe than I normally would now to get them into finance committee. And during the quarterly reports, it is a duplication basically at that point, but
That's what I was trying
on
to
a
think, is
monthly
we went
basis.
to the quarterly for a reason. So I guess I'm concerned about
well, it's
that's
because
extra
we
work
were-
going
we
back to
were-
monthly.
The reason why we went to the quarterly reporting is because we wanted to eliminate some time out at these regular board meetings.
Right.
And there's another important piece that I think that I failed to mention too. Kelly McDermott is a member of the finance committee. And I think it really behooves us to have her involved in that, representing REA, because, you know, I think as long, if we're out in the open, I mean, we have nothing to hide. I think it's gonna make our negotiations go easier. I think it's gonna give her, or whoever the REA president and designee is, a level of comfort to be involved with that as well. So you know, that's part of, and I think that was the intent when we
So-
created it.
I thought the budgets have always been
Could I
open.
suggest that perhaps for our one of the things that are on the agenda of our next finance committee might be a draft or suggestion of a calendar of topics for the next, I don't know, 6 months or whatever, so and perhaps Karen might draft that with.
It'll be up to the board what you want to discuss.
Well,
I'm an
I
open
think
book.
I
so-
think you've heard contracts, monthly cash flow, you know, but there might be months, if it's a month when we're doing the quarterlies, we don't need a monthly cash flow that month because we're doing the quarterlies. So,
And what she needs to help support her job. I mean, if
Right.
she's thinking in 6 months she needs to do this, or 3 months, I mean, part of it is she knows what she has to do.
that's why I was suggesting if that shouldn't be like a term paper, just a little, you know.
I think we might want to, you know, I know these are routine kinds of things you're wanting to look at, but as I'm thinking about it, there could be things generated from what's happening in our lives, what's coming up from the board, that the board would say, the board, not just the people on the committee, would say, why don't the finance committee take a look at this? You know, for example, just something that's coming up, and I'll give this hypothetical, and that's technology. You know, what are we gonna do with technology? Well, we're working to get a technology plan out there. But it could be something that we would say, as a finance committee, you know, take a look, start to talk about this, do something
I can
that,
give you a good great
ask some
example.
questions.
The high school renovation and the bond. That's an item that I believe the initial discussion should take place at the board level. You know, if we're gonna renovate the high school and spend
Umpty
25
bump
million,
money.
let's just say 25 million. I don't know what that number is. Then-
We love it when you throw out random numbers, Jeff. That should not be in the headline.
But I bet you, if you did everything that you wanted to do at the high school, 25 million is probably low.
Oh, I'm sure. It's just
Well,
for
now,
some
you
reason
used
those
the word
numbers end up in
want.
print.
But, that's true, but, you know, that's the type of topic that I think the introduction should take place at the board level.
Well, I like Dr. Poindexter's idea of perhaps we need to generate this calendar together. We should be acting as a team, and it should be generated by the board.
Because not every contract needs serious study if it's a simple contract.
And
We set the
I
we
think
set
it,
the limit at 250,000, I think.
I think it does have to be very flexible because, you know, things happen. I mean, you know, we have a deficit that we have to deal with also. You know, that should be discussed at somewhere,
Well,
you know,
somewhere al-
obviously.
We're somewhere along the way, when we've reached a certain point, we might say, take a look at this. So again, I just think it would, if it's a board committee, the board needs to be involved in generating some of the work, not the officers alone, because again, you're serving the board.
Right.
So what we need from Karen to make that discussion happen, though, would be any contracts that might be coming up that sort of meet that guideline, so that we can see where they're coming, and we can.
There aren't very many that are that big.
I know.
I know we
I'm not sure, Suzanne, if it's a finance
I
committee
have a
that we would
calendar in my office
just
of the
always need to limit it to contracts. I think the board, again, could say, you know, what is it that you could take 45 minutes here, review, and get out and tease it out, give us the questions, give us the things that we need to be able to respond to.
I
Not
agree
take
with
an
that.
action on it.
I agree with that.
That might save us, you know, a whole night here trying to pull something out and then going back and getting data.
Yeah, we don't want to just generate things just to generate them. We want them to be useful. So, so could we, how do we want to do this? Do we want to have, continue this discussion at our next meeting? Do you want to, send ideas to Jeff or Karen, Jeff and Karen?
I think we should do that, and I think we should copy the rest of the board on it. I think that would be a good discussion, an ongoing discussion.
Okay.
Yep. I think that sounds
So, everybody, think about what you want from the Finance Committee. Send an email or a note or whatever to,
Jeff, I think it should be Jeff, because it's
Jeff.
a board.
okay, he's,
Okay, and then we
to
make
Jeff and
We'll
to,
figure it out, and we can then discuss it with
Not,
Karen.
I think it would be
Okay.
helpful if you gave us operating principles, not just topics.
I agree
If
with
there's a
that,
way
too.
that we needed to operate, lay it out, and then we could spend some time on one meeting saying, these are the way we're gonna operate, and this way we're gonna put our agendas together, this is how it's going to happen, this is when how we'll set our meetings, this is how we'll treat each other while we're here, this is how we'll end it, this is how we'll end it, we'll ring the bell.
Don't hit her in the head with the bell.
so, I think that's what she was trying to do.
I'm about ready to end this.
So,
Well, the key is, everybody that's in this room needs to know what we're doing. The administrators know so much more when they come out here, and they've been through it 100,000 times, but when they stand up there, you know, they're ready for it to be over in 10 minutes, and I'm just getting started.
Well,
When we
how long do you need to,
we've had your statement.
generate your thoughts?
Just being honest.
Do you need,
I know, well, the other, and I don't, that would be a whole other conversation. Never mind.
yes. So,
We have an executive session after this meeting, too.
I know. Let's say if you have your ideas in by April 1st, would that be acceptable? That's a Wednesday,
Because truly, the only two things that.
April
And it
Fool's
is
Day.
April Fool's Day.
That's
yes.
right. So by April 1st,
Okay.
have your ideas to Jeff.
Because really, the only, I mean, the next meeting is, the only thing I really, I mean, other than the financial report, is I want to go through the contract and just start asking questions. You know,
And
what
I
do we
think-
want here?
yeah.
What is our expectation? Now, it sounds like
We
there's
have to
already
have-
been some groundwork laid, so I guess I would like to have that information.
I can type something up. It's pretty general, but I mean, it's just our basic premise.
We can give what we know at this time, and then we get Ron set for the appropriate time when we can be sure that we have his legal expertise
Right, right.
for the next one.
And I think, honestly, I think one of the processes that we should discuss, really on my list, is I think before contracts go to the attorney, I think they ought to come to the board for discussion, because so often, you know, there's certain things that we've been talking, if we talk to Ron Cross way early in the process and he's doing a lot of work, I just don't want him to duplicate his work and duplicate its expense. And I don't want to do Ron Cross's job, but if
In
we're at-
case there are changes or
If we're at a
questions or whatever.
Yeah, if we're at a process that we're gonna put a $2.5 million contract on the table, then I think the board at least ought to have seen some kind of a some kind of a underline what the contract is gonna look like.
If I might interject, Ron does those contracts, so I kind of have to have him, because it comes from him, and so he'll have to see them preliminarily, because there's a lot of things that, he does the typing, and
I appreciate that, but we renewed the 5-year contract with Saddle across the city. So-
I was not here at that time.
Well, and I'm not saying you didn't, but
I have
my
to, I mean, I was
expertise
not
is
here.
we renewed that contract for 5 years with Saddle, and Lacrosse never either, so.
Yeah.
So we need,
so
we
need to do
will
our due diligence.
set up some processes
Yes.
and so forth. Okay, no one can say this board makes quick decisions. Okay, anything else with board reports or old business? Okay, we are ready to preview the upcoming meeting and
You know,
events.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna be talking about transportation
Uh-huh.
once again. And I am glad we've had the conversation regarding the finance committee, because I think we're on the road now to getting some operating principles and ways that'll help us all. And a schedule
Absolutely.
that we'll know and appreciate, and we'll be working that. We do have the technology plan coming up, and we were thinking in terms of the next meeting in March, but I'm wondering if, with the other things, if we maybe should move that to April, as opposed to trying to bring something new and discuss it until we can move a step further with this.
Is our first meeting in the month is work session?
Work session, so that could come to an April.
Our next board meeting is the 25th.
Right, and because we had said earlier, I had said earlier to Rob, and I think I'd said to you, we would try to bring something in
Well, we're going to be
March.
spending probably a lot of time on transportation at that
Right,
meeting.
which causes
so-
me to say, I'd like us to move further and think about it at the work session in April. If
April
that's okay.
8th.
That would be a good work session, Sean.
Yeah, okay.
Could I make a suggestion, and that is, and this is just because there've been so many wonderful things happening lately, particularly in athletics. I hope that at our next meeting, we'll have an opportunity to celebrate those with our athletic department and teams, perhaps. 'Cause that's awesome. And I can't even list them all. I'd be afraid I'd leave something off the list.
Well, and hopefully we'll have BPA and Skills USA.
So, right. I didn't see I don't remember the dates of those field trips, but we could.
Press conference.
I do, if I can take their time, because I missed it. It really is just really quick. It was in your board update, but I just publicly want to say thank you to Mrs. Dixie Robinson and Kelly McDermott for attending the last legislative meeting. It did have an impact, and Dr. Poindexter will be with Rusty Hensley giving a tour of our career technology with Senator Rotz on Friday. And then we are pleased, it's been busy at Fairview this week because they will have Governor Mitch.
You are in trouble.
Governor, what's his?
Governor Pitts. Edit. Attending and touring Fairview tomorrow, but he will have specific time with fourth graders. But you are all welcome if you want to stop by at 1:30. He would love to have your presence, and maybe you can talk to him.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Can have a chance to talk to him. So I'll be there from 1:30 to about, the kids need to start getting ready to get on the bus, but to 2:30.
Okay, thank you. We are ready for our bell ringer.
Okay, well, last evening, I had a chance to participate for the evening with the Honor Society new inductees. I know Mark was there as well. And I just went home feeling very good after that session. You know, when you go to some of these evening events and you're tired and you're thinking. But as I saw those students and how proud the parents were of the successes, and I'll just share one quickly that I've had to share with people today because it was just so important. There was a young man that's worked very, very hard, and he's a senior, and he made the Honor Society. He was so proud, and his parents were so proud, and he's doing some great things now. He sees ways to really move on, and so when you have those experiences, then you can come back to work the next day saying,
It's good. It's good in Richmond.
We are adjourned.
We are.